WLW Cincinnati. It's 5 o'clock and time for the latest news from WLW Communications Exchange. President Kennedy will visit that rare thing, a Republican city in the South, on Friday. Dallas has turned to the GOP in recent years, but the city is important in Mr. Kennedy's plans for next year, since he carried Texas by only 43,000 votes in 1960. Thursday, the president visited San Antonio, where the reception was warm, and Houston, where it was not so warm. He's spending the night in Fort Worth. A lawyer for James Hoffa says he'll appeal a ruling that bars him from practicing in a federal court in Nashville, Tennessee. The lawyer, Z.T. Osborne, was barred from the court when two judges ruled that he tried to bribe the jury in a Hoffa case coming up. The judges said Osborne admitted offering the bribe through a middleman, but Osborne asked the public to reserve judgment until he appeals. He also said the Teamsters president had nothing to do with the alleged bribe. The threat of a nationwide railroad strike is back now. The sleeping car porters union is threatening to walk out next month unless it wins a 40-hour week, higher wages, and greater job security. Leaders of the AFL-CIO voted Thursday to back the porters. An AFL-CIO spokesman said a strike would halt every train in the country. There were tears in both Republican and Democratic eyes Thursday when Congressman Burns of Wisconsin explained his investment in a company that figures in the Robert Baker investigation. Burns, a Republican, admitted buying the stock before it was available to the public, and at a much lower price than the public paid, but said he did nothing wrong. Toward the end of his speech, Burns wiped his eyes, as did others, and the entire House stood and applauded. A declaration agreed on by Russia and the United States on outer space travel goes before a UN committee Friday. The declaration was announced Thursday, covering the legal aspects of outer space exploration. However, it omits any mention of spy-in-the-sky satellites by either nation. The drafters hope the 28-member Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space will sponsor a resolution sending the document before the General Assembly. The U.S. and Russia are continuing their argument about the East German Highway. A Russian note released by the Soviet news agency lays the blame on American officers. It says they refused to submit to the normal procedures early this month when an American convoy was delayed 41 hours. Russia's note was in reply to an American note saying the Soviets are changing the highway procedures arbitrarily. Red China has warned the United States it will help Cambodia militarily should it become engaged in fighting with South Vietnam and Thailand. The announcement followed Cambodia's decision Wednesday to stop receiving U.S. economic and military aid on grounds America is planning to undermine the Cambodian government. Both South Vietnam and Thailand are anti-communists and receive U.S. support. Prime Minister Hayato Ikeda's pro-American Conservative Party has defeated left-wing opposition in Japan's parliamentary elections. The turnout in Thursday's balloting was the lowest since the end of World War II. At the halfway point in the counting, the Conservatives had nearly 61% of the votes. Pope Paul is expected to officially declare the acceptance Friday of a document which allows modern languages to be substituted for Latin in some Catholic services. The Ecumenical Council, which gave preliminary approval to the document Thursday, will have a final vote on it at the same time. This will be the first major work completed by the Council. But now, ventriloquist Eugene Lambert of Dublin has been convicted of making a false declaration. The 34-year-old Irish comedian and ventriloquist admitted he obtained a driver's license for his dummy, Finnegan. But he said he did it only to prove that anyone can get a license in Ireland. WLW Weather Service forecast for Cincinnati and the Ohio Valley. Well, showers developing in eastern Indiana, central Kentucky, moving eastward now. Possibly a few showers in the greater Cincinnati area sometime around 6 a.m. Some showers throughout the region today, increasing in frequency late this afternoon. Now, the current temperatures are mostly in the mid-50s.
Okay, come on, get up. It's time for Dateline RFD. Good morning. This is Dateline RFD. It's a rather sleepy morning from the looks of the people that you have to work with around here this time of morning.
We resemble that remark.
And you resemble that remark, Pete Matthews says. Well, they're getting a little tired, I presume. They've been around here since about 11 o'clock last night. Here we get up bright and cheerful and sunny with a wonderful disposition about 3 o'clock in the morning. Rush down to work, get everything on the air, get the whole day started. Then the vice presidents come down at 9:30 for coffee. It's 6.5 minutes after 5 o'clock, and I'd better get to work, or I won't be here tomorrow.
You're the highest fidelity, most cheerful announcer in radio today.
Thank you very much, Pete Matthews. I see where the Roman Catholics at the lunch for the president in Dallas, Texas today had a dispensation to eat sirloin steak, although it's Friday. A church spokesman said the president didn't need one. The Diocese of Fort Worth and Dallas granted the dispensation since most of the crowd expected at the Trade Mart for the lunches are non-Catholic. A spokesman said that the president didn't need the dispensation since he's commander-in-chief of the armed forces and church laws of fast and abstinence do not apply to the military. Plans to feed the president the biggest, juiciest steak in Texas fell through, though. Secret Service said that it'll choose the president's steak for him at random from the 2,000 that are cooked. This is a customary precaution where the president dines at public gatherings. First stop for President Kennedy today is Dallas on his second day of his trip around Texas. Dallas has gone Republican lately, and there are sure to be some protests among the crowds. Yesterday, the president and Mrs. Kennedy were warmly greeted in San Antonio. In Houston, the crowds were big, but not as friendly. Goldwater signs were bobbing in the crowd, and a plane flew overhead trailing a sign, "Coexistence is surrender." Many of you listeners are suffering from symptoms of stomach distress due to excess acid. If you suffer from such distress, get Willard's message of relief. It explains the Willard treatment, which has brought soothing relief to thousands suffering from symptoms of acid stomach distress, from poor digestion, heartburn, acid dyspepsia, headache, sleeplessness, or symptoms caused by stomach or duodenal ulcers. Well, you've tried one thing after another until you've just about given up hope that anything will bring fast relief. No matter what you've tried in the past, a free copy of Willard's message will tell you how and why this treatment acts so quickly to relieve symptoms of distress arising from stomach or duodenal symptoms. Ask for Willard's message at any Gallagher, Gray, Walgreen, or Muir drugstore or any other authorized Willard dealer. Just look for the Willard sign in the window. Russian diplomacy is entangled in disputes in Africa, the Middle East, and Germany. At Leopoldville in the Congo, 100 Russians will be packing and leaving the entire embassy staff and their families. First to go will be 2 diplomats accused of plotting against the government of Premier Adlai, who says the Soviets can send replacements and keep the embassy going, but every Russian there now must get out of there. Russia is keeping quiet about its troubles in Iran. That Middle East nation says the Russian MiG shot down a civilian Iranian plane over Iran Saturday, killing 2 men. In the past, Russia has accused the United States of using Iranian planes to spy along the border. The Navy says a salvage ship may try to bring up the wreckage of a U-2 spy plane today. The plane crashed Wednesday. It's been discovered about 40 miles northwest of Key West in about 100 feet of water. The search for the pilot is still on. Informed sources say the U-2 was on its way back from a routine mission over Cuba. The National Safety Council says any driving time is time to use seat belts. Always use seat belts and care. This is WLW Radio, Cincinnati at 5:30, and time for Farm Reporter, and here's George Logan.
That was a sneaky thing to do, Howard.
For Spot News now, stand by.
It's 25 minutes after 6, and time for the latest news from WLW Communications Exchange. President Kennedy will visit that rare thing a Republican city in the South today. Dallas has turned to the GOP in recent years of elections, but the city is important in Mr. Kennedy's plans for next year, since he carried Texas by only 43,000 votes in 1960. Yesterday, the president visited San Antonio, where the reception was warm, and Houston, where it was not so warm. He's spending the night in Fort Worth. This is the nation station, WLW, Cincinnati.
Over, under, around, and through, pell-mell travels, pleasure to you. Pell-mell's natural mildness is friendly to your taste. Yes, Pell-mell's natural mildness is so friendly to your taste.
Pell-mell's famous length travels the smoke naturally over, under, around, and through the finest tobaccos money can buy. Makes it mild, but does not filter out that satisfying flavor so friendly to your taste.
Over, under, around, and through, pell-mell travels, pleasure to you. Pell-mell's natural mildness is so friendly to your taste.
Buy Pell-mell famous cigarettes. Outstanding. And they are mild.
5.5 minutes past 7. Time now for a check on the weather from the WLW Radar Weather Service. And here to report is meteorologist Frank Pierce.
Good morning, everyone. Well, a lot of moisture due our area here over the next couple of days, and it looks as though it's going to get pretty well started here today. We have quite a broad band of Gulf moisture that is flowing from that area across Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, and all the way to the northern lakes. Showers and some thunder showers, and actually in places some rather steady and moderate rains have already broken out in the midsections of the Mississippi Valley. And the radar indications now of a line that is close to the Ohio-Indiana border and then follows along the Indiana and Kentucky borders back into western Tennessee. That line, the forward wall of some showers and occasional light rain that get more intense as you get deeper into it. And we're going to be getting deeper into it today, and so we'll look for the increasing heavy cloud that is generally spread over the area now, and as it thickens, more rain expected out of it today. We'll start then with mostly cloudy, windy conditions across the area. The showers already in Indiana and western Kentucky, and those moving into Ohio and the eastern sections of Kentucky, at least by this afternoon, with a few sprinkles of rain out ahead of it even this morning, so you better have your umbrella, raincoat, and so on for returning home tonight because of the rather heavy rains that could be here and there throughout the region. It's going to give us some adequate amounts of moisture, temperatures of the mild variety in the 60s, around 66 or 65 in Cincinnati, and lows still in the 50s tonight, Cincinnati 56. Saturday, cloudy, windy, and turning cooler with still some showers left over from today and tonight. 56 in Cincinnati now, and that's the weather.
7.5 minutes after 7, WLW time. More news, Bill Robbins.
The Navy says it might try today to salvage a U-2 spy plane which went down in the Gulf of Mexico Wednesday, presumably while returning from a flight over Cuba. The wreckage is located about 40 miles northwest of Key West, Florida, in about 100 feet of water. The Air Force said the plane apparently experienced mechanical trouble. The pilot, Captain Joe Hyde, Jr. of LaGrange, Georgia, is missing, but the search for him goes on in hopes he might have reached a reef and reached safety. Informed sources say the craft was returning from a routine mission over Cuba when it crashed. The U.S. has been sending reconnaissance planes over the island regularly since Soviet missiles were discovered there in October last year. Informed sources in Leopoldville say one of 2 Russian diplomats arrested by Congress.
13.5 after 7, here's Bill with the sports.
The Cincinnati Royals face a rugged 3 games and 3 nights scheduled over the weekend with only 8 healthy players on the roster. Their opponent tonight at Cincinnati Garden, the Detroit Pistons. Tomorrow night, the Royals play the Hawks at St. Louis, then return to play the Hawks again at Cincinnati Garden on Sunday night. 3 players could miss tonight's game. Jack Kleiman still has an injured hand, J. Arnett's recovering from the flu, and Tom Hawkins definitely is out with a bad ankle. Only one game played in the NBA last night. The Los Angeles Lakers beat St. Louis 111-99. And, of course, tonight's game between the Royals and Detroit will be heard over WLW Radio beginning at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. The Cincinnati Wings hockey team play the St. Louis Braves at St. Louis tonight. The Ohio State Buckeyes fly to Ann Arbor this morning for that traditional game with Michigan. A win tomorrow would give the Buckeyes at least a tie for second in the Big Ten. They'll have a fight on their hands. Coach Woody Hayes ran his first and second units through a light drill and sweatsuits yesterday, and the Buckeyes are ready for the Wolverines, although Michigan is slightly favored. The last big weekend of college football gets underway tonight with one major game. North Carolina State, currently in the running for the Atlantic Coast Conference Championship, tangles with league foe Wake Forest. American Davis Cup player Dennis Ralston faces Australia's John Newcombe in today's rounds of the South Australian Tennis Championships. Ralston advanced to the finals by outlasting top-ranked Aussie Roy Emerson in a 2.5-hour match yesterday. Well, that's news and sports. Fred Bernard, what do you have to add?
Bill, this is a story about a London glue salesman who has been fired for being too good a salesman. Elijah Ellis joined a manufacturing firm 4 days ago, and he was told that he was expected to sell at least 200 cans of glue and up to 500 a week. Well, Ellis sold nearly 1,600 cans of glue. His boss fired him for disobeying instructions. Turned out that through an oversight, Ellis had not received a company letter asking salesmen to accept only small orders because of a glue shortage. A company spokesman said Ellis will stay fired anyway.
Sticky situation.
Sticky situation, yes indeed. And that's the latest news from WLW's Communications Exchange. Bill Robbins reporting. Next news at 8 o'clock here on the nation station, WLW in Cincinnati. Coming up to 16 after 7, we'll get the Clock Watcher show underway with Nat Cole.
Wouldn't you really rather have a Buick? A Buick? A Buick? Wouldn't you really rather have a Buick than any other kind of car?
Buick Special,
Rim size,
Buick LeSabre,
full size,
Buick Electra 225.
oh, luxury,
Buick Skylark,
so personal,
Buick Wildcat,
wild. Buick Riviera means adventure when you drive slow. Wouldn't you really rather have a Buick this year? So wouldn't you really rather have a Buick? A Buick? A Buick? Or wouldn't you really rather have a Buick this year?
24 after 7, the field of useless information. The record industry has come out with some figures on the number of records sold in 1962. If laid end to end, they say they would stretch some 37,000 miles. That would go around the world at the equator about 1.5 times. Also has a note here about a new album that's just been released, which I guess kind of figures. Seems to be the era of comedy albums and taking advantage of big stories in the news on which to base those albums. They have one called the Casa Nostra story now with takeoffs on Joe Valachi, who's called Valapio on the disc, and Senator McClobber instead of Senator McClellan, and various other takeoffs on the investigations recently held in Washington, the underworld investigations by that congressional committee. You might be looking for that. Well, it's time for another piece of music here, so let's have some from Victor Damone. Hank Mancini, okay.
When we play water charade, we were like children posing.
Now let's see if we can help you out with your driving this morning as you get ready for the last day of the week at work. We'll see if we can get you in here on time and so forth. We do it first of all via a pre-flight traffic report from Lunken Airport, and at the other end of the line, Lieutenant Arthur Merring. Good morning, Art.
Speaking about being on time, I think that was an answer remark. I just want to assure Bob Janigan I just saw over Red Bank and Madison. I made it. But looking in now to the traffic situation this morning, weather-wise, looking out in the eastern sky, Aurora, the rosy-figured goddess of the dawn, is tinting out there. I don't know why I'm getting poetic on a Friday morning. Well, as Ollie James says, TGIF. Thank goodness it's Friday. We do have some traffic troubles this morning, and from all indications, it's going to be a heavy traffic morning. I noticed that coming into the airport area here this morning. We have some accidents. Over at Grand Avenue and Carruthers Avenue in Newport, an accident reported there for you folks in that area. And just as we pulled into the airport area here, an accident run came in at 8th and Mount Hope over in Price Hill. The most serious thing at the moment, though, is over on North Bend Road, on North Bend Hill, just below Caldwell Drive, where we have a report now of a 4-car rear-end collision. That's a 4-car rear-end collision on North Bend Hill, just below Caldwell Drive. And until we can get over there, I'd suggest to the folks that ordinarily use that to use Galbraith Road on the north, possibly for the eastbound movement. Westbound, use Seymour. I know a lot of folks come up North Bend Hill in the morning, but you can come up Seymour Road, that's 71st Street in Carthage, and then on up the hill and intersect North Bend up above Caldwell Drive, and this should help a little bit. Also, with the new bridge on Township Street in Elmwood now, Center Hill Road would be open to North Bend Road. So I would avoid that, and Jack and I will get right over there and check that one out for you. North Bend Hill below Caldwell Drive, 4-car accident. We had a report about 7:15, 7:20 of traffic light trouble at 7th and Central, and this is on that Price Hill movement inbound. But a car down there, we haven't heard any more on it, which would indicate that we have a man on the job taking good care of it. So we'll bounce out of here now, and we'll talk to you from the air in just a few minutes, Fred. Back to comics.
Okay, Art, thanks. 25 before 8.
May I have one of your Winstons?
Of course. Be my guest.
I think I'll change to Winston.
You've just changed to the best. So if you're thinking of changing to a filter cigarette, take it Winston. Changing to a filter cigarette. Change to Winston. Because Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
Join the swing to Winston. Only Winston has a pure white modern filter, plus exclusive filter blend up front. 2 good reasons why Winston is America's largest selling filter cigarette by far.
So if you're thinking of changing to a filter cigarette, change to Winston. Because Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
Come on, change to Winston.
Talk about good, this is it, my friend. Talk about delicious, I can recommend. A fresh fish sandwich that's really great. The best fish sandwich you ever ate. So talk about delicious and talk about good. You get it at Big Boy in your neighborhood.
And I'll tell you something else that hits the spot, my friend. That's breakfast at Frisch's. A particularly good idea if you're one who has to have an early breakfast and you don't want to bother the missus at an unearthly hour in the morning. Many of the Frisch Big Boy drive-ins in this area serve a complete breakfast menu that includes all the egg dishes, ham and bacon, hot cakes, and as a special, Frisch's Danish rolls. They are baked fresh daily in Frisch's commissary. So even if your breakfast only consists of a roll and coffee, why not make it a Frisch's Danish roll and Frisch's truly delicious Big Boy coffee? Yes, for breakfast, stop at Frisch's. 11:30, or let's make it 10:30 before 8 o'clock. It's an article in a current national magazine that claims that there will be an increase in the percentage of twins in the world's population. And with all the quintuplets being born lately, this kind of follows along. The story says that the rise in modern medicine will make it possible to save many premature twins who have been lost in the past. After one set of twins, the chances of a mother having another set is about 5 times the national average, or about 1 in 17 live births. The article also says that twins definitely run in the family. And one other note here that borders on the unbelievable. The magazine says there is evidence that the world's record mother may have been an Austrian woman who reportedly bore 69 children. That included 4 sets of quadruplets, 7 sets of triplets, and 16 sets of twins. 9:30 before 8, news on the hour. Peter Duchin here in Manhattan. Five and a half before 8, here's Bill Albert and Bill DeWitt.
Bill, why do they call a passed ball just that instead of calling it an error?
Well, the reason for calling it a passed ball is that it doesn't affect the progress of the batter. It only affects the progress of the runner. And I presume that's the reason that they had originally, and they've stayed with it.
Could it be, too, because the catcher has so many more chances than the ordinary fielder?
Well, that could be, but back in the earlier days, I guess, I know that they had a separate listing that was used for the errors that were committed by the pitchers and the catchers, because they do have so many chances, and they didn't want that to reflect in the fielding of a team, for instance. If you had a real good infield and a real good outfield, and the pitchers and catchers were making a lot of errors, they didn't want it to reflect in the fielding average.
Of course, you got a couple of knuckleball pitchers. You have to get a few more passed balls, aren't you?
Well, I can't blame the catcher for not handling those knuckleballs. There's very few catchers that can catch them.
Calling all men from outer space, cowboys and Indians too, Daniel Boones and Robin Hoods. Here's a good thing to do. Stop and enjoy a big, big boy, a double-deck hamburger treat. The national favorite, coast to coast, so stop and enjoy a big, big boy.
Yes, and when you stop at the sign of Frisch's Big Boy, you know that you're going to get the finest double-deck hamburger in town. But did you know that you can also get a really delicious breakfast at Frisch's? True. Choose from a menu that features any style of eggs, ham, bacon, pancakes, juices, cereals, fresh fruits, and as an extra treat, Frisch's own baked Danish rolls. You can top off your breakfast with a cup of that special Big Boy coffee, and you're all set to go into high gear, I'll tell you. So today and every day, enjoy a delicious breakfast at your Frisch Big Boy drive-in. 22 minutes after 8, time for a little honest evaluation of yourself, gentlemen. See if this little poem applies. Wives who can run up a bill not knowing just how they will foot it have husbands who lay down the law but always forget where they put it.
Ever stop to think about what's happening under the hood of your car? Well, there are 4, 6, or 8 pistons there, and they're going up and down as fast as 4,500 times a minute. That causes engine wear. Now, nothing on earth can stop engine wear altogether, but there is a gasoline that can cut engine wear by as much as 60%. Pure Firebird with tritane. If you can reduce engine wear that much, you'll be giving your car a longer lease on life. For the less your engine wears, the longer it'll keep its power. And, of course, the more money you'll save on gasoline and repair bills. Doesn't all that sound like a difference in gasolines that's worth changing brands to get? Get the gasoline that cuts engine wear. Fire up with Pure Firebird at your Pure Oil dealers. Bob Rockwell for Pure Oil, and thank you.
Chapanikis, that's Xavier Cugat and the orchestra here on the Nation Station, WLW in Cincinnati. 8:30 on a Friday morning, November double deuce. We've got a report from Frank Pierce that we'd like to hear right now, pertaining to the weather, of course. Frank, how about it?
Right, Fred. Cloudy skies, of course, over the entire listening area of Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky.
Time is 9 o'clock.
NBC Radio News on the Hour, brought to you by Wynn's friction-proofing products to correct and prevent car trouble from radiator to gas tank. Now here is Edwin Newman, NBC News.
An Indian Air Force helicopter crashed today in Kashmir, and 5 senior officers in the Indian Army and Air Force were killed. One of the dead was Chief of Operations of the Indian Air Force. In South Korea, 9 Koreans have been killed and 9 injured while gathering scrap metal on a United States Army firing range. The Koreans had been spotted before the firing and warned to leave by leaflets dropped from a helicopter, but apparently hid in bushes and caves. Then they rushed out to gather pieces of an Honest John rocket that was fired, counting on half an hour before another went off. Instead, it came a few minutes later, and the Koreans were caught. The incident took place yesterday. The new government in South Vietnam has relieved 31 high-ranking military officers of their commands and placed them on indefinite leave without pay. All 31 are believed to have been favored under the regime of President Diem, and all ought to be investigated. In the meantime, they are not permitted to take other jobs. President Kennedy, on the second day of his tour of Texas, has speeches scheduled today in Fort Worth, Dallas, and Austin. After the Austin engagements, the President and Mrs. Kennedy will fly to the ranch of Vice President Johnson and stay overnight. Sometime today, Mr. Kennedy will telephone congratulations to former Vice President John Nance Garner at Uvalde, Texas. This is Garner's 95th birthday. The Navy may try today to bring up the wreckage of the U-2 plane that crashed into the Gulf of Mexico on Wednesday morning after an observation flight over Cuba. The search is still on for the plane's pilot, Captain Joe Hyde, Jr. of La Grange, Georgia. The Congo government last night deported to Brussels one of the Russian embassy officials arrested on Tuesday. The Soviet news correspondent arrested yesterday has been released. Edwin Newman, NBC News, New York.
Bless you. Now that the cold and flu season is here, be sure you always have Bayer aspirin handy to relieve pains and reduce fever fast. Then when symptoms strike, remember these 3 steps doctors recommend. Rest in bed, drink plenty of fluids, and take aspirin to reduce fever and relieve pain. If there are youngsters in your house, get orange-flavored Bayer aspirin for children, too. Bayer is the best.
This has been NBC News on the Hour. Listen again on the Hour for NBC Radio News, brought to you by Bayer Aspirin. Al Cappes monitors talking cartoonist weekends on the NBC Radio Network.
Yum, 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 Hussman's potato chips. Try some Hussman's potato chips. Do it today.
Husband's Potato Chips, the most snack-satisfying chip on the market. Just right for meals or in between snacks. Always fresh, always crisp, always delicious. Husband's Potato Chips. WLW, Cincinnati. The guests on today's program appear in exchange for advertising or promoting the groups or events with which they are associated. Prizes awarded on this show are furnished to us in exchange for advertising. From McAlpin's Tea Room in downtown Cincinnati, WLW presents The Good Morning Show, starring Bob Braun.
Good morning. Good morning. A very special time of day when we say good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. We know that everything's okay when we say good morning.
And I say good morning.
A happy good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, it's a happy good morning from McAlpin. This is Bob Braun here with the Good Morning Show, along with the Lucky Pennies here today. Thank you very much. All right, take it back to her now, Stan. All right, yeah, we'll do that later. The Lucky Pennies are here along with Penny West, and we'll have a good program today. Plus, we have a double audience today. Did you know that, Dean?
I don't know, but they certainly look nice.
Yeah, they
Very
sure
nice.
do. Well, the reason I say that, we have with us today the Mothers of Twins Club from out in the Westwood area, Western Hills area of Cincinnati. I don't know why I say I lived in Westwood, that's why, and I think I still owe them a month's rent. I guess it's a thing I've never been able to get over. We'll have a lot of fun on the Good Morning program today. We have some nice gifts for you. I did mention White Villa, and in yesterday morning's Inquirer, they had their big Thursday ad. And in there, if you read that, you would have seen by now the complete line of things for Thanksgiving Day. They have everything at your neighborhood independent White Villa Market that, of course, will fill that Thanksgiving table for you. The pineapple, the beans, they have the cranberry sauce. Got a special on that, too, just in time for Thanksgiving. You can get 3 cans of White Villa strained cranberry sauce. This is the kind you take out of the can and can slice, and it tastes very good with turkey or chicken. And 3 cans for 59 cents. Just one of many fine specials. And believe me, at that neighborhood independent market called White Villa, the one that's owned by your neighbor just down the street, if you take your total food budget down there, you'll save money and also you'll get top quality merchandise.
White Villa, famous foods.
You will be enticed by budget priced White Villa, famous foods. The quality's there, variety to spare. Try White Villa, famous foods.
I guess I should get to the question of the day, but I like to have music before we get into that on the Good Morning Show, so I'll tell you what we'll do, fellas. Penny, you can put down some of your groceries over there, and while Penny's getting set to sing this, I'll remind you, since we're talking groceries, that Partridge brand hams made by the H.H. Meyer Packing Company in Cincinnati also are delightful for a holiday table, too. A lot of people don't buy turkeys, but rather have ham for Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter time, and if you do that, just look for the name Partridge brand. That's the semi-boneless ham, and with Partridge on the label, you know that's the very best your money can buy. Packaged by the H.H. Meyer Packing Company right here in Cincinnati. It's Partridge brand ham. And speaking of ham, no, that's a terrible introduction. Here's Dean Richards and his lucky pennies.
Billy Gumbo. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna see my share of meal.
WLW Radio, the home of Cincinnati Royals basketball, and this is Ed Kennedy, your play-by-play commentator, inviting you to join us tonight on this station for the NBA game between the Royals and the Detroit Pistons. Charlie Wolf, now coaching the Pistons, will be bringing in a squad of All-Americans, led by Bailey Howell. We'll be at the mic and hope you'll be at your radio tuned to WLW.
Time is 8:30 tonight on WLW Radio Cincinnati. It's now 10 o'clock a.m.
NBC Radio, News on the Hour, brought to you by Bayer Aspirin for fast relief from headache, muscular pains, or fever of a cold. Now here is Russ Ward, NBC News.
President Kennedy, in his second day of speechmaking in Texas, is defending the TFX warplane as a powerful force of freedom. We'll have a report from Texas coming up. South Vietnam's Revolutionary Council has dismissed 31 high-ranking military officers for an indefinite period while investigations are made into their activities during the Diem regime. French officials are quoted today as saying the de Gaulle government would give sympathetic consideration to economic and military aid for Cambodia. Cambodian Prince Norodom Sihanouk reportedly has said France is the most capable power to represent the Western world in that part of Asia. There has been no official request for help, however. 9 South Koreans have been killed and 9 others injured as they were gathering scrap metal on a U.S. firing range north of Seoul. The victims died when an Honest John rocket landed in the area. An Army spokesman said the South Koreans had been warned of danger on the firing range, that they were trespassing when the tragedy occurred. By a margin of more than 100-1, delegates to the Roman Catholic Ecumenical Council have given final approval to the use of modern languages instead of Latin in most forms of church worship. This is the first definitive action by the Council. That report on the President. President Kennedy has opened the second day of his political swing through Texas. The story from NBC's Robert McNeil with the presidential party in Fort Worth.
President Kennedy's beginning the day with a defense of the controversial TFX fighter plane. He's telling a breakfast audience in Fort Worth right now that there's been a good deal of discussion of the competition to win the TFX contract, but relatively little discussion of what this revolutionary plane will do. The president has also just spoken to a crowd of several thousand standing outside in the rain. He's now preparing to move on to Dallas for a major lunchtime speech on the theme of American strength. Police in Dallas have mounted the biggest security operation in their history to prevent any repetition of the demonstrations which marked the visit of UN Ambassador Adlai Stevenson last month. Although Texas newspapers are much preoccupied with Democratic Party feuding behind the glamour of the occasion, it has not detracted from the Kennedys' popular success.
This is WLW Radio, Cincinnati, at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Is there a teenager in the house? She'll appreciate a phone of her own in decorator color. For full information on teenager extensions, call the telephone company in Cincinnati, dial 396-9900.
Prizes awarded on this show are furnished to us in exchange for advertising. WLW Radio and WLW Color Television welcome you now to Ruth Lyon's fabulous 50-50 Club. The star of the show, Ruth Lyons.
Believe me, and so I feel fine.
The day after Troy Donahue.
I feel just wonderful. Live young. Da-da-da-da-da. I'll have to do that in slow motion today. Oh, Chad, I didn't know you could sing. Oh, that was Eddie. How are y'all? You look lovely. Don't they look pretty today? Huh? Where y'all from? Newport. How many from Newport? How many from Newport? Good group here. Is this a club or what?
Sister Club.
Secret Sister Club.
Yes, we were formerly the junior high school minstrel club. When our kids were junior high school students.
Minstrel club?
Yes.
Let's have a minstrel show. Mr. Bones?
Yes, that's how we raised our
Used
money.
to do that. Raise money for the PTA, huh?
After our children got out of school, we formed a club and been together since 42.
Well, I think that's very nice. And y'all get along real well, huh? Wonderful. And you're all here today looking beautiful. Who else is here? Where? Lexington, Kentucky. You came quite a distance from the far south, huh? She's never seen the show before. Wait just a minute. I got to find out what this woman's been in Africa for the last 25 years. How come you've never seen our show before?
Lexington.
Why, a lot of people watch us down there in Lexington.
Well,
Do you have a television set?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. I thought maybe she was looking in the radio, you know. That can happen.
We don't get it good. Only on a nice, clear day we might get you. But
Well, now, we have so much mail from people in Lexington that see the show and know all about it.
I wish you'd buy a television station down there so we could get you.
Buy another station, and so, all right, we'll do that. We'll buy another station in Lexington. What are you looking so happy about? You're here with all these women? How are you?
Fine.
What's your name?
Bill Wayhoff.
Where are you from, Bill?
Amelia, Ohio.
Amelia.
Yes, ma'am.
You came with a bunch of women, huh?
No, my mother.
Oh, just your mother, huh? Well, nice to have you here, Bill. You in school?
Yes, ma'am.
What grade are you in?
Ninth.
Ninth grade. Yes. Well, now, don't look so worried, Bill. Everything's going to be all right. Nobody's going to harm you or upset you. Give him a necktie, Bobby, one of our Beau Brummel neckties right off the bat. What are you so dressed up for with the orchid?
It was a complete surprise. My husband sent it, my 12 children.
How many children?
Well.
Oh, my land. Stand up. 12 children she has. And she looks like a teenager. How old are they?
From 2 to 20.
From 2 to 20?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that remarkable? A darling? I think she is a darling.
The same year you were.
Married the same year I was. There seems to be some difference of opinion here. Or shall I say activities.
This would be good for one meal at her house.
A jar of Skippy peanut butter? One meal.
Yeah,
one
one
meal,
meal.
yes. One jar a day, huh? Yes. Oh, isn't that cute? 12 children. Where are you all from? Finneytown. Price Hill. Where else? Hamilton, Ohio. Hamilton. Where are you from? Newport. How about you?
Fort Thomas.
Fort Thomas. Newport. How about in here? Where? Hamilton. How many from Hamilton? Let's see. Is that a club? Just a group of friends? Who else is here now? Deer Park. Pleasant Ridge. Oakley. Mount Healthy. Good. Groesbeck. Huh?
Somebody from Georgia.
Somebody from Georgia? Who's from Georgia? Who's from Georgia? My goodness. She flew up last night? Well, my goodness, I must say hello to her. How nice that is for her to come. Did you used to live up here?
Yes, I just moved down there in June, and I came all the way up here just to see you.
Well, I want to welcome you, and I hope you have a nice visit with us. What's your name?
Mary Duchilli.
Mary Duchilli. Nice to know you, Mary. Glad you got to come.
I am too.
Hi to her uncle.
Let her say hi to her uncle.
I have sick relatives, and I don't know whether I'm going to have time to see them all while I'm here.
Well, sure. What's his name?
Well, Uncle Johnny, my cousin Michael, and I've got them all.
Is the whole family sick?
Yeah.
Pretty many of them.
The whole family, huh? Oh,
And
that's
do you
too
know
bad.
that my husband, whenever I'd say I'm on the looking at you over television.
Not on the telephone. You
No,
can't see
we
me on
have
the
a colored television,
Oh,
and
you
it's
do?
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
He'd say, "Oh my lands, listening to her. Do you know now I can't get him away from there?"
I do that to men.
He says, "Ruth grows on you."
I grow on him. Like a wart?
Ruth, really and truly.
Is he retired now or what?
No, he's home. He just got out of the hospital.
Oh, he's been ill.
Uh-huh.
Well,
And
I
he's
hope we can
home.
cheer him up a little bit then.
Oh, yes, he's crazy about
What's his name?
Johnny Sanciola.
Johnny Sanciola. Well,
He
give him
always
my
sent
regards,
you the
will you?
bananas.
Well, he'd like me before you knew it. He'd like me before you knew it. He just didn't want you to know it. You know that?
That's right.
That's right. I have a lot of hidden admirers like that, you know, but their wives don't know about it. And it's better that they don't know about it.
Would you like to hear good news?
Yes, I would.
Well, we have the Secret Sisters Club. They're former members of the junior high PTA.
Yes,
in
that's the group
Newport.
I talked to here and
They
some over
gave-
here.
They gave, as a group, $29.
Wonderful.
Other individual contributions, $155.90. A total from the audience today of $184.90.
Well, wonderful. 10 pennies, Clifford. Oh. I was going to take a dime away from Clifford and make that an even dollar there, you know, yes. But let's see how our total stands today, shall we? Now, I have to appoint somebody every day to remind me at the end, near the end of the show, that man was so cute the other day. All I wanted him to do was to remind me, you know. But he got up and made the speech himself, what the total was. Now, who wants to be the spokesman today? Right here. Over here, we have a volunteer. Now, somewhere near the end of the show, for the people who don't get to tune in the beginning, you see, you get up. I don't care what's going on, just stand up, and I'll come over with the microphone, and you announce the total for today in the Christmas fund. Will you do that?
Yep.
What's your name?
Virginia Williams.
Where are you from, Virginia?
Northbrook.
Northbrook. Don't forget now.
It's a good idea because I listen to you every day on the radio and I hardly ever watch you.
Yes.
And at the end of the show, I never know what the fund is.
Well, we always announce it on radio at the beginning, but some people may not hear, not tune in right away, you see. All right.
You heard some good friends of yours, too, today. Would you like to mention them?
Yes, we had some wonderful donations. We had a wonderful donation from the Frisch Drive-In restaurant, you know. Land, I paid for all those hamburgers I've eaten there in my time. They do have beautiful
Did that
products,
check come
you know.
from the big boy?
Came from the big boy and the brawny lad. Wonderful check from them. A lovely check from one of our agencies that we deal with, Mr. Chester Moreland, who handles the CERTA account and the Coca-Cola account. He always is a very generous contributor to the Christmas fund. And also from, you brought this one in, Bobby.
Yeah, from Pete out at the Fireside Restaurant in Mount Healthy.
In Mount Healthy, the Fireside Restaurant. Every year they remember us, you know.
Sure do.
And we're getting lots of nice donations, lots of groups that are going together instead of sending Christmas cards. Now, I'm not trying to put the Christmas card people out of business or anything, but many of them feel that they see the people they work with every day, you know, and they would rather contribute the money to the Christmas fund than to buy cards and mail them to the people that they work with, and a lot of them have done that and pooled their money and sent it in a nice contribution.
Speaking on the other side of that, the man from whom I buy my cards each year is Bernie Dabney here in Cincinnati, and the other day I placed my order and gave him the check for the cards, and he said, now I know what my contribution will be to the Christmas fund. Every year when I buy my cards, he takes the whole check that I pay him for the cards and donates it to the Christmas fund.
How nice.
He's done that for the past
Oh, there are
several
many
years.
nice things being done, you know. Let's see how our fund stands today. Now, yesterday, which a year ago yesterday, was Thanksgiving, as you know. I've gone through that all this week. I'm sure you're aware of that by now. But we were 153,000 yesterday against 150,000 a year ago, you see. So we were very, very pleased with that. And the girls are going to work tomorrow, the extra girls, because they feel they want to get as much of this mail open before Thanksgiving Day so that everybody has an opportunity to be in there for the drawings for the wonderful gifts. Let's see how our fund stands today. $160,524.68. 2 cents, Clifford, 2 cents. And another dime for that contribution here. Dime, Robert.
I only have a quarter and change.
Well, we'll take that. That's all right. That's wonderful. So, you see, next Thursday is the first big day, the first big telephone day, where we make 40 telephone calls, and all these beautiful gifts will go out to our people who are making the fund possible again this year. You know, this morning I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said to me, if you should ever leave WLW or leave the 50 Club, what would happen to the Christmas fund? I said, don't ever mention that to me. Don't ever say that to me if you don't want me to just crack up and die. Now, I'm sure that somebody would carry it on because it is such a worthwhile thing, and it has done so much and meant so much to so many hospitals and sick children. But I don't even like to think about that, you see. I'm like Scarlett O'Hara. I'll think about that tomorrow. Today I got something else to think about.
It's not so much good, though. I can see where they would think about that.
I
Seriously.
guess so, yes. This man mentioned this to me. He said, you can't go on forever. I said, who said I can't? I refuse to die. I just have too much to do here. I can't...
Maybe you could contact that woman, that doctor, then Dick Tracy.
I don't know about that.
You don't read that?
No.
Well, she has discovered a way of taking a young heart and taking it out of a young person, and they put it in some kind of lead thing, and then they can transplant that into someone who's older, and they're young again. They got a man 92 years old who can run the mile in less than 4 minutes. And,
I never could run a mile in less than 4 minutes when I was young. So I don't think that'll help me, Bobby.
Well,
That may happen in the future.
oh, it could.
It may. Except what about the rest of the body? It's still a 94-year-old man, you know.
Well, they
Does
feel
the heart take care of all of that?
Yeah.
What about those tired old lungs and...
Now, I'll tell you what we'll do next.
What did I say?
Never mind, Mary. Just let it leave it alone. Just forget it. You meant those tired old lungs.
Yes.
You know, no matter how hard you try, people are always looking for something to laugh at that they shouldn't laugh at. You know that? Now, you know, our top prize on the Christmas show in the adult group is a beautiful Chevrolet station wagon from our dear friend Carl Gatchett, you know, this is his, what did he tell me, 16th year that he has given us a Chevrolet or car, you know.
Not a stripped down model,
Oh,
but
a beautiful
the whole thing.
You know, if you say that again, I'm going to faint. You say that every time I say, mention this car, you always say, not a strip down. It makes me laugh. I think of a strip teaser.
I'll tell you why I do that. A lot of people give cars away, and they make a big fancy announcement. When the people get it, though, it doesn't have a radio, it doesn't have a heater, it's got black wall tires, little hubcaps.
Everything in there. The radio, the heater,
automatic
drive, white wall tires, everything.
Thing.
Most beautiful model you complete, exactly. Right. Now, this is the top prize in our adult group. Right. You see, this will go to an adult. Right. Next to that will be the $1,500 cash from our good friends at Fell's Company. You see, $1,500 cash. Oh, wowie! Would you like to win that?
Oh, I should say I would.
What would you do if you won $1,500?
Pay a few little bills that have been laying there looking at me.
In the bowl?
Yeah.
Now, today we announced, the reason we couldn't announce this before, this had to go through a lot of channels and so forth, and I would not announce it until I had it all in writing. Not that I didn't trust these darling men, I did. But I have to have all these things completely in writing, you know, exactly what it is. But we have now added to the Christmas show, the Holiday Hello show, the top prize in the teenage group. And you know what it is? It's a Comet two-door sedan. In the teenage group. Isn't that wonderful? And this is from the Lincoln Mercury dealers throughout this area, and they said they were so sorry that they hadn't gotten a... You know, in a big company like that, you know, it has to go to this person for approval, and then the board had to meet and so forth. But imagine that now. Some teenager between the age of 13 and 19, or 20 is our end of our teenage group, between the age of 13 and 20 will be the proud possessor on the Sunday before Christmas of a brand new Comet. And that's a darling car.
It's a two-door sedan.
Two-door sedan, and it'll be a beautiful car, I assure you that. So I want you to tell all of the teenagers about this, because many of them... Oh, I could never begin to even estimate the number of teenagers now who were once recipients of the Christmas Fund years ago in the hospitals, you see. And they have a great, we get many contributions from them. But add this little special note to them. Tell all your teenage sons and daughters about this. I remember last year we had a car as the top prize in the teenage group, you know. And a young boy up in Columbus won it. And this boy was a boy who had had a lot of trouble in his home, a lot of hardship. This was like a new world opened up for this boy, you know?
A lady wrote me yesterday and asked a question which you could answer very easily. She says that she has 4 children, and each of the 4 children wants to take a part of his allowance and donate it to the Christmas Fund. And she wants to know if she can put the entire amount plus each of their names in one envelope and mail it in instead of sending it 4 separate things.
It would be much more simple if she would put them each on a separate piece of paper and put them all in one envelope.
In the same envelope,
yes. Oh, yes, because we take that out of there, you see. Mm-hmm. And that's where we draw, you see, from what's inside of the envelope, not from the envelope itself, you see.
She thought it would be better
That's why I say inside, be sure you put all the pertinent information. Your name, your address, your phone number if you don't have a phone, or if you're going to be someplace else on Thanksgiving, put that phone number, or if you're going to be out on the Sunday of December 22nd, a different phone number, put that, and put the age of the child and the age of the teenager.
How about checks and money orders now?
Checks and money orders are made out to the Ruth Lyons Christmas Fund. That's the way the fund is banked in the bank, you know, and that's the way they go through, checks and money orders. And the address is Ruth Lyons, WLW, Cincinnati 2, Ohio, and down in the corner of the envelope, this does speed up the handling of the mail a great deal, put child, teen, or adult. If you'll do that, that will help us a great deal because the girls are working very, very hard, very, very hard, and we want to get as much mail opened as possible before the drawing next Wednesday afternoon. Maybe Herman might win some. Oh, Herman's feelings are hurt. Why? Oh, I hurt his feelings yesterday. Herman's a very sensitive man.
Oh, I heard that. You made that remark at the end of the show.
When what's his name, Henny Youngman said to me something, somebody said something about me playing the organ.
Yes.
And he said, what'd you do with the monkey? And I said, I married him.
Yes.
All I was trying to do was top Henny, you see, that's all. And I came home and Herman says, how do you do? How are you? You know, I can tell when he's upset right away, you know.
He jumped up on the chandelier.
Yeah. And he was standing there with a big banana in his hand. He said, "Oh, so I'm a monkey, am I?" And he really wasn't, though, but he was pretending like it. He likes to win a little sympathy now and then,
I met his bowling partner the other night. One of his bowling partners, Dick Bray's brother, Bob.
Oh, Bob Bray,
And he was saying that Herman is really very nice when he's out, that you can rest assured that he never
Well, he
gets
better
into
be.
trouble.
I've given him enough training, I'll tell you that. Would you like to have that new Frigidaire range? Isn't that beautiful? Now, isn't that the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? That is the new 1964 electric range with the double ovens. This one has that beautiful door like the flare range has, you know, that you can peek in, see what's going on. Both of these are the pull-out type ovens. What'd you do with this? Cherry, I'm going to... They do everything in the world to me. Pull it out, just reach down in and clean it. No reaching back in the oven or anything. And, of course, they also have, at Frigidaire, those wonderful splatter pan broilers, you know, that keep your oven very fresh and clean to begin with. All of the, here are the 4 cooking units up on top here. 2 big ones, 2 smaller ones, and all of your controls here, which of course are remarkable. You can just turn this on, go away and forget it, and your whole meal is finished. You can keep things on low simmer, or you can get water to boil in almost instantly. It's remarkable. And then down here, if you've noticed, there's a great big drawer for your pots and pans to be stored. And we would like to suggest that possibly some of this anchor hockingware might go very nicely if you had the new range, you see. Wouldn't that be beautiful with that?
Sure would.
Of course, here you have 4 pieces. There are really 5 altogether. The great big casserole, the big skillet, the smaller casserole, and these also can be used, as you well know, as the saucepans. Now, if it's a saucepan, you could use it right on top of the range, hook the one little handle on there, and when you're through with it, just push one little button, and off she comes. Here's the smaller, can be either a saucepan or a casserole. 5 lovely pieces of anchor hockingware with the Fire King ovenware tops, you know, the lids you can see through. So easy to clean, so easy to cook with, and they will not break, they will not crack, they will not craze. Take them right out of the refrigerator or the freezer, put them right into the oven or on top of the stove. You have no problems whatsoever. We have one to give away today, and they all come packaged like this in the little box with the handle. These make lovely Christmas gifts, you know that?
Sure will.
And the not with the handle, I didn't mean that. They come packaged like with the handle on the box.
Package, right.
Not this handle. You have to buy one handle that handles all the other 5 products.
That's very reasonably priced.
$2 is what this costs. And, of course, it's made beautifully and will last a lifetime. So, if you want something lovely in a new range, now this, of course, is the new deluxe Frigidaire range. Has the what we call the cloved edges here, you know, no grease or anything can get down in there. Comes in lovely colors. Those of you who do not have color television, this is the most beautiful turquoise blue I've ever seen. Wouldn't you love to have a whole kitchen like that? You know, you can get the Frigidaire refrigerator to match that and everything. Or you can get it in pink, you can get it in pale yellow, you can get it in light green, or the traditional white, whichever you prefer. And your Frigidaire dealer has a complete line of beautiful ranges for you to choose from. If you don't want something quite that large, you can get the 30-inch one with the great big oven that holds 6 pies and all that sort of thing, you know. And they have a new one. We haven't talked about that yet, but that is a beauty too. In a narrow one, but which has an upper and a lower oven. I'm not supposed to mention that, so don't tell them I told you about that, will you? But you go and see your Frigidaire dealer, and you'll see the most beautiful line for $64. And then don't forget, in order to cook and enjoy your cooking, you need lovely things to cook with. So we recommend heartily the Anchor Hocking cookware, the newest addition to this type of cookware, which I love because you can put it right on the table and serve from it, you know. And the most important thing is it is not expensive. It is very reasonably priced. Do you know whose birthday anniversary this is today? 22nd?
Right, November
22nd of November. Hoagie Carmichael, one of the really great writers, I think, of American music, you know.
Born in
great standards. 1899. He's 64 years old today.
One more year
and
to go.
still a great entertainer, you know. Still a great entertainer.
Don't you love to hear him sing?
Oh, I love to hear him sing. Old Buttermilk Sky and all those tunes, you know. Wasn't Troy cute yesterday?
He really was.
This is a very nice young man. He really is. I was talking to this man from Warner Brothers about Troy, and he said so many of these young people come out into Hollywood, and they become pretty well known quickly, They begin to make pretty much money all at once and so forth. And he said they have such problems with them, They're not ready for that. But he said Troy is such a gentleman at all times. They came to our house for dinner last night, and I tell you, I have never had a more enjoyable evening in my life. He can talk about anything. He went over the whole house from top to bottom. He loves early American furniture, And he looked at everything. He asked about everything. And Callie and Pauline, I want to tell you, they served the dinner upside down. I'm telling you, you never saw such a mess as they had.
What was Candy's state of
Pauline's, Candy was numb. She was plain numb. But Pauline says, Miss Newman, that is a handsome, charming young man. I said, he really is. And he's a perfect gentleman at all times, And tonight you're going to be down there, huh?
Right.
Guess who's coming?
Candy?
Guess who else?
Herman?
Guess who else?
Mother?
Right.
I don't blame you.
Sure.
You're going out tonight?
I was up till 10:30 last night. I haven't got sense enough to stand up today. I'm going to try one more night, and then I'm going to collapse for the weekend,
I was talking to Troy this morning, and he said he's a little worried because he hopes the teenagers know he will be there, and he hopes that all the ladies who watch you every day will tell their daughters and sons that he's going to be there.
Handsome. He is
He
really
really
darling.
is.
And he's going to answer questions, from the teenagers and bring them up on stage with him and everything. He's a really nice young man. And that is a darling movie. Go along with the teenagers, if they'll let you. Go along with them. You'll enjoy this movie. It's light, and it's gay, and it's happy, and it makes you feel real good,
Everybody gets a free autographed picture of Troy who goes there tonight.
And I think they also are going to give some of his record away,
As long as they last.
Live
right.
young. You're like the... listen, that tune nearly drove me crazy yesterday. That went through my head all day long.
What did you think of Candy twisting on that tape we made yesterday after your
How
show?
about that?
Oh, it was very good.
I didn't know she could do that.
I didn't either. She introduced me.
Candy is... people think that I have been... I get letters, You'd make a baby out of that girl, Oh, I'd love to, but I can't do it. She has a mind of her own. She's a very independent, self-sufficient young girl, and a very delightful child. Now, I'm speaking of my own child, and I'm prejudiced, naturally.
You should be if you're not.
But she is the most darling little human being, and she took Troy and showed him all the pictures she has up of him, And you know what impressed him more than anything? She baked him a big chocolate cake. And in the afternoon, he sent her some flowers. And he said, I hope the cake is chocolate. And luckily, she had baked a big chocolate cake. Isn't that funny? Oh, she had a very nice time. She said to me, she paid you a great compliment last night. She said to me, Mother, I like young men who talk to me like I'm a human being, who don't talk down to me, who are not too silly. And she says, I think I have two favorites, Troy and Bobby. She loves Bobby, just loves Bobby. And Bobby's been awfully nice to Candy. It hasn't been too easy for her at times, Some people just hate me, you know that. So they try to take it out on her, And I've had all my life to try to say to her, Candy, you are yourself. Whether they like me or not doesn't depend on how they treat you. I have to get this so we can get this out of the way here.
Your Kroger special?
Our Kroger special this weekend at all the Kroger stores are these wonderful Gold Crest chocolates. All kinds. Wonderful new brand of candy, new line of candy that all the Kroger stores are carrying. Peanut butter cups. Did you ever try these?
Yes.
These are delicious.
With milk chocolate?
Absolutely. These are the famous mint wafers. Any one of these is delicious. And if you buy any 2 packages and take along your little coupon from the Kroger newspaper ad, you get 50 extra top value stamps this weekend. And they do mount up, and this is the time to make them mount up. Now, I'll do one other thing so we can move everything away from our board of gifts over here for Thanksgiving. How do you like this chair? Sit down in this, Bobby. That's a beautiful shade of a deep turquoise, isn't it?
Matches the range.
You know what they call that? A television chair. That's flex steel construction, and this lovely covering here, it's partly covered in Banlon and partly in a plastic leather, you see. Lean back.
Does it look...
How long are you going to stay, Bobby?
I may be here through guiding light.
Isn't that lovely?
Oh.
So if the television gets a little enervating and you're too tired, just lean back and drop off. Isn't that a beautiful chair?
Now I know what we look like. Through feet.
Through feet. Beautiful chair. And that girls, the show is up here. Will you shut up, please? That woman hasn't shut her mouth since she's been in here. Now, would you like to do the show?
I'm just making up for when I didn't get to come in June, I was in a wheelchair.
Well, and you're all right again.
Yeah,
I'm delighted.
I had to give my ticket away, but I was glad because my daughter was here.
You were
from
supposed
Maine,
to come
and
in
I gave it
June.
to her. Yeah.
And now you're all right again.
No, I'm walking with a cane.
Well, you're getting around, though.
Yeah,
What'd you do, break your hip or something?
I broke my knee, and then I had a staph infection. I should have taken some of your good spray with me.
The Lysol
and then
spray
I would have got that staph infection.
Yes, there you are. It'll kill staph and the other germs, streptococcus. Oh, these words, they're so hard. But this is a wonderful, wonderful spray, and if there is a cold in the house or just to keep the air fresh in the home is a very important thing. And so many people, I mentioned this one day on the air, and ever since I mentioned it, they have just been more letters about it. People who have taken this to people in the hospital to let them spray their room and keep the air fresh, Because sometimes in the hospital you smell ether and you smell other medicines from coming around in the hospital, and this will freshen the room of the patients, you see. This is the wonderful Lysol spray disinfectant. What is her gift, Bobby?
From Arabesque, a lovely plaque entitled The Knight in Armor. It's really beautiful.
Oh, let's turn him around. Let me see him. Yeah, he's got a bow on his neck. Now, who put that bow on there? That doesn't go on there.
They dress nice, too.
Oh, knights don't wear ribbons around their necks. Take that off of there. Had it been Thanksgiving, she would have won what, Bobby?
$500 cash from the Fells Company.
$500 cash. You could use that with 12 children, couldn't you? Good. Who's our next young lady here?
Mrs. Fahey from Westwood.
Mrs. Fahey?
That's right.
All right.
New soft keeps your clothes looking lovely, though you have but few. And that softness is appealing. I like the nearness of you.
The nearness of you.
It's not the pale moon that excites me, that thrills and delights me. Oh, no. It's just the nearness of you.
Oh, I love that tune, don't you? Beautiful. And you'll love New Soft also. It puts the newness back in the fabric. Cuts down on the wrinkles, cuts down on the ironing time, keeps clothes soft and new looking. New Soft. What is her gift, Bobby?
From Ship and Shore, something that she can keep lovely with New Soft. 5 blouses.
5 blouses from Ship and Shore. That's a nice gift. A reminder to be sure and have plenty of Coca-Cola on hand for the weekend. Now, there are going to be a lot of good football games. Your husband will be home there. The young people will be watching. There's going to be a show on this weekend, Bobby. Mr. Wilson, who is the president of AVCO, which owns WLW, he went to Russia with a group of businessmen. And one of our men here from our documentary department went over to New York and had an interview with him and made some tapes and took some movies and things of that kind. And he's going to tell about his reaction to many of the things in Russia, the way the people live and the food problems and the business problems. And they're going to show this on WLW television on Sunday. Now, the times are a little bit different in some of the areas. Here in Cincinnati, it'll be on at 6 o'clock in place to meet the press. In Columbus and Dayton, it will be on from 5 to 5:30.
Dayton is 5:30 till 6.
Oh, Dayton is 5:30 to 6, and Columbus is 5 to 5:30.
And Indianapolis, it's 10:30 to 11.
10:30 to 11. So it's a very interesting program. It's an interesting thing to me. I haven't traveled too widely, but where I have gone, I have seen so many things, and I have come back and said certain things, And some people took issue with me on some of them, not all, but some. But eventually, so many of these things have come to pass. That big show on last week about the tremendous build-up of West Germany. You remember? Did you see that show? Tremendous show, Project 20. The very thing was said right on that show that I said. No, this was not on Project 20. This was on Wonderful World, wasn't it? I said, I admire these people for their determination, But I fear the rise of too much power in West Germany. I really do. Because this is a country, despite the fact that Herman's a German, he is, and despite the fact that many of us have German ancestry, I don't happen to have, but many do, and I don't hold that against them at all. But this is a country that somehow, when they once get up, there's that military initiative again. And I think we have to watch this. I really do. I don't think that the young people want any problems like that. And I don't think the people who lived through the last war want it. But there are still living in Germany today, in my opinion, the remnants of the Nazi Party. And they were raised on this belief, They were brought up to believe this. And these ideas are not that quickly quelled, you see.
Men who would be like about my age.
Exactly.
Example,
they were all raised in the youth movement, the Nazi movement. Let's wave to the folks who are watching. Say hello to the folks listening in. We want you to see, we hope you agree, we really are lovely on color TV. We wish you were with us, we want you to know we're having a ball on the show. So we wave you a great big hello.
The total in the Christmas fund as of today, November 22nd, is $160,524.68.
Everybody in there. Frank Pierce, come forward. Well, look at the weather forecast now for the weekend. Rain. It says rain. Hooray! Rain and colder. You mean it, Frank?
Rain and colder, a high of 55 and a low of 55. I mean, a high of 55, yes.
Frank, are you confused again? A low of 55 and a high of 55.
No, temperatures will start dropping this afternoon with the rain coming in. They'll go right on down by midnight, about 55 at that time, and keep right on going colder tomorrow. So it's right on down. So
really, honest to goodness, wet rain, water rain?
Wet rain, and finally into some snow on the lakes during the weekend. Saturday will turn off quite cold. We'll be down in the 20s and 30s in northern Indiana, and that will be coming across our area on Sunday, so very cold coming up this weekend compared to what we've had so far.
Turn up the furnace, huh?
Right.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you all. And don't forget, send your contributions this weekend. Goodbye, everybody.
Prizes awarded on this show are furnished by for advertising.
Stay tuned for the Turnpike Show coming up next over WLW Radio. This is the nation station, WLW in Cincinnati, your Clear Channel service. Eastern Standard Time, 1:30.
NBC Radio News on the Hour, brought to you by Wynn's friction-proofing products to correct and prevent car trouble from radiator to gas tank. Now here is Martin Agronsky, NBC News.
President Kennedy denounced critics of his foreign policy today as prone to confuse rhetoric with reality. On the second day of his Texas tour, the president used a Dallas speech to contend that those who advance seemingly swift and simple solutions to every world problem will end in endangering the nation's security. Though the president didn't mention Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater by name, there was no doubt his remarks were aimed at the man who is now regarded as the front runner for the Republican presidential nomination. Acting Commerce Secretary Franklin D. Roosevelt, Jr. has testified to the Senate Banking Committee that the U.S. will have to hurry its decision on selling surplus wheat to the Soviet Union, as the Russians have now set a May 21st deadline for beginning shipments. Roosevelt argued against the proposal of South Dakota Senator Munt to bar government-sponsored credit for wheat purchases by any communist nation. He contended this restriction would bar U.S. businessmen from getting a fair chance to win a part of Russia's annual $4 billion of trade with the free world. At the United Nations in New York, the 17 member states of the presently postponed Geneva Disarmament Conference voted to resume negotiations at Geneva next January 21st. And more news after this from Wynn's Friction Proofing.
Carefree driving begins with a can of wins and a can of wins today.
Did it happen this morning? Did you step on the gas and finally realize that the pep and zing your car used to have is gone? Sort of takes the joy out of driving, doesn't it? Well, there's a very good answer to your problem. It's called WINS friction proofing. WINS friction proofing restores a healthy measure of the pep your car has lost with age. It increases power and gas mileage, makes starting easier on cold mornings. But best of all, WINS friction proofing penetrates the surfaces of the moving parts inside your engine. It smooths and seals these parts to hold engine wear to an absolute minimum. Next time you stop for gas or service, add a can of WINS friction proofing to your crankcase. Your satisfaction is guaranteed, or your money back.
So add a can of wins today.
Here again, Martin Nagronsky.
A two-day conference between West Germany's Chancellor Erhard and France's President de Gaulle has ended, and a report from NBC's Bernard Frizzell in Paris.
West German Chancellor Ludwig Erhard made plain here today the German government's reliance upon the United States for its defense against the threat of Soviet aggression. That was the note on which Erhard wound up his two-day visit here to President de Gaulle. The French were reportedly careful not to present to Erhard a choice between themselves and the United States. But the Germans were said to be astonished at the sharply critical attitude of the French toward American policy. A joint communique called for all necessary efforts to get the common market moving forward again and to increase trade with the United States through the forthcoming Kennedy round of negotiations for tariff reductions. But no concrete agreements were announced. This is Bernard Frizzell, NBC News, Paris.
Democratic Senator George McGovern of South Dakota, home state of the Fisher quintuplets, has a letter from a constituent that he finds hard to answer. The constituent writes that he doesn't mind a bit all the gifts to the Fisher family, but that he feels he's being unfairly treated despite his similar circumstances. I've got 5 children, too, he complains to Senator McGovern, and just because mine came one at a time, no one has given me a cent. Michigan's Governor George Romney insisted today at the Midwest Governors Conference in Omaha that he is not seeking the Republican presidential nomination next year. This is Martin Nagronsky, NBC News, Washington.
When your child is sick with a cold or flu, remember what doctors recommend. Bed rest, plenty of fluids, and aspirin to reduce fever and relieve pains. When you give orange-flavored Bayer aspirin for children, your child will feel better fast. And knowing he feels better, so will you. Each tablet is the 1 1/4 grain dosage doctors recommend for children, and it gives you such confidence to know you're giving the best. So always, orange-flavored Bayer aspirin for children. This has been NBC News on the Hour. Listen again on the hour for NBC Radio News, brought to you by Bayer aspirin for children. Emphasis adds to your listening enjoyment weekdays on the NBC Radio Network.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday, November 22nd. Welcome to the Tune Pipe. Fred Bernard and Little Abner here until 3 o'clock. It would appear to be another one of those gray and overcast days with some rain falling around the tri-state area, cloudy skies to continue with the showers off and on again, that type of day. Be a little windy this afternoon, too, with highs in the upper 60s. While we're at it, we'll get right to the forecast. Present temperature is 58 here in Cincinnati, and the relative humidity at 85%. Indianapolis has rain and 58. Dayton has rain, 65 there. Columbus, 65. Louisville, 68. Lexington, 69. Huntington, 69 degrees, and they're all reporting cloudy skies. Leading edge of the rain is showing on the radar from near Toledo to Dayton to Andersonville, Indiana, to midway between Louisville and Evansville. Now you have it all in your mind. This place is the eastern edge, about 40 miles west of Cincinnati. The rain is spreading eastward, 15 to 20 miles an hour. We may have a few sprinkles in advance of the main rain area, which falls mainly on the plain. But that's next week. This week, Little Abner. We're going to visit Dog Patch, USA. And to get you in the mood, let's have ourselves a little hoedown. We'll have to stand by here just a moment. There may be something happening. Yes, there is. There's a bulletin just handed me from Dallas, Texas. An unknown sniper fired 3 shots at President Kennedy. This is in connection with President Kennedy, who is now touring Texas, as you know. I'll tell you exactly how this reads. Dallas, an unknown sniper fired 3 shots at, and then there are 5 letters, PMOUX, then a flash. Kennedy's name is misspelled, flash again, and at the bottom of this headline it says, Kennedy seriously wounded. We will, of course, be awaiting further details on this story, so please stand by. This report just in from Dallas, Texas, an unknown sniper firing 3 shots, evidently at the presidential party while they were touring Texas. At the bottom of this it says, Mr. Kennedy has been seriously wounded. We will, of course, bring you details as they are received. And in the meantime, we'll go to Dog Patch. This is the overture to Little Abner, Lehman Engel and Orchestra.
Been shot. Who? Kennedy. President? Yeah.
Here is a bulletin from the WLW Comex newsroom. A late bulletin from Dallas where 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade today in downtown Dallas. No casualties reported at first. However, the latest flash indicates President Kennedy was seriously wounded, perhaps fatally, by an assassin's bullet. Now, that's all the information we have. A bulletin, a sniper apparently seriously wounded President Kennedy in downtown Dallas today, perhaps fatally. We'll keep you posted as the news comes into the WLW newsroom. Here's another bulletin from Dallas. The latest report says President Kennedy and Governor Connally of Texas were cut down by an assassin's bullets while they toured downtown Dallas in an open auto today. Clint Hill, a Secret Service agent assigned to Mrs. Kennedy, said he's dead as the president was lifted from the rear of a White House touring car and rushed to an emergency room in the hospital. The president, his limp body cradled in the arms of his wife, was rushed to the hospital where the governor of Texas also was taken. That is the latest information on the either assassination attempt or assassination of President Kennedy in Dallas, Texas this afternoon. We'll keep you informed as the latest bulletins arrive in the Comex newsroom.
That's the overture to Little Abner. It's 14 minutes before 2 o'clock here at the Nation Station as we await further word on President Kennedy's condition. Repeating what Bill Robbins has told you just a moment or two ago, the president has been rushed to a hospital. We, of this moment, have received no further details, reports on his condition. So we shall await those words as they will be coming from Dallas shortly, I would presume. And in the meantime, continue with recorded music by Percy Faith.
further word from Dallas on the shooting of President Kennedy this afternoon. The latest add to the original story that the president had been shot, and a Secret Service agent assigned to Mrs. Kennedy said the president was dead. He was rushed to Parkland Hospital. And further word says that reporters about 5 car lengths behind the chief executive heard what sounded like 3 bursts of gunfire. Secret Service agents in a follow-up car quickly unlimbered their own rifles and drew their pistols, but the damage was done. The president was slumped over in the back seat of the car, face down. Texas Governor Connally lay on the floor on the rear seat. It was impossible to tell at once where President Kennedy was hit, but bullet wounds in Connally's chest were plainly visible, indicating the gunfire might possibly have come from an automatic weapon. 3 loud bursts of fire were heard. Dallas motorcycle officers escorting the president leaped from their bikes and raced up a grassy hill. That's all the information we have. No indication of where the shots actually came from, who fired them, or whether the person or persons are in custody. The only indication we have that the president might be dead was the statement by Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent assigned to Mrs. Kennedy, who said he's dead when the president was lifted from the rear of the White House touring car and rushed to Parkland Hospital. The governor of Texas also apparently was seriously wounded. That's the only information we have on the assassination or assassination attempt on President Kennedy at Dallas, Texas, a short time ago. We'll keep you posted as the further reports come into the WLW Comex newsroom.
This is an NBC News Bulletin. We take you now to Robert McNeil, NBC News in Dallas, Texas.
Several shots were fired today as President Kennedy's motorcade passed through downtown Dallas. A police officer at the scene said he believed the president had been wounded and has been taken to hospital. People screamed and lay down in the grass as the shots were heard as the motorcade went by. Police immediately fanned out over a wide area. A small Negro boy and a white man said they had seen a man with a gun in the window of a building overlooking the route. This is Robert McNeil, NBC News in Dallas, Texas.
This has been a Hotline special report. Stay tuned to your NBC station for other Hotline reports and for the late developments on the NBC News on the Hour.
Percy Faith and his orchestra, and we will at this particular point continue with recorded music as we await further word on President Kennedy's condition. In case you have missed the earlier reports from Dallas, Texas, where Mr. Kennedy has been on tour, the report received just about 25 minutes ago that the president was fired upon by an unknown sniper. 3 shots were heard, and the president and also the governor of Texas have been rushed to a hospital in Dallas. As of this moment, we have no further word on the condition of either President Kennedy or the governor of Texas. We'll be standing by and in the meantime dispense with our regularly scheduled program and presentation of the original recording of Little Abner this afternoon. So we urge that you stay with us here on the Nation Station for late news. As it comes in, you will get it immediately. It's 4 minutes before 2 o'clock. We're approaching news time here at the Nation Station. I'll remind you this is WLW in Cincinnati. We urge you to stay tuned for any further bulletins from Dallas on the condition of President Kennedy, who was fired upon today by an unknown sniper, wounding the president and also the governor of Texas. I suspect some details coming up now on NBC News at 2 o'clock.
This is NBC News. Here is Peter Hackis in Washington.
President Kennedy has been shot. As of now, there is no final official report on his condition. Here now, piece together the news items we have as they have reached us from Dallas, Texas. Within the hour, President Kennedy and Texas Governor John B. Connally were cut down by would-be assassins' bullets as they toured downtown Dallas in an open automobile. Representative Albert Thomas, Democrat of Texas, says he's been informed the President and Governor Connally were both still alive after having been shot in an assassination attempt. Thomas, standing outside the corridor of the emergency room in which both Mr. Kennedy and Connally were under treatment, said he's been told the President was still alive, but in very critical condition. The President, his limp body cradled in the arms of his wife, was rushed to Parkland Hospital. The governor also taken to Parkland. A Secret Service agent, Clint Hill, a man assigned to protect Mrs. Kennedy, said he's dead as the President was lifted from the rear of a White House touring car, the famous bubble-top car which was sent to Dallas from Washington. He was rushed to an emergency room in the hospital. Other White House officials who were questioned about it say they were in doubt. The corridors of the hospital, of course, in pandemonium. The incident occurred just east of a triple underpass facing a park in downtown Dallas, Texas. Associated Press reporter Jack Bell reports 3 shots were fired as the presidential motorcade entered a triple underpass in Dallas that leads to the Stemmons Freeway. After the president was shot, the Secret Service waved the motorcade on at top speed to the nearby Parkland Hospital. Here in Washington, the White House press office said at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that it has nothing beyond press information on the shooting. Kennedy apparently was shot in the head. He fell face down in the back seat of his car. Blood was on his head. Mrs. Kennedy cried, "Oh no," and tried to hold up his head. Governor Connally remained half-seated in the car, slumped to the left. There was blood on his face and forehead. The president and the governor were rushed to the hospital as quickly as possible. Mr. Kennedy was to have made a speech at the Dallas Trade Mart, not far from the hospital. Reporters about 5 car lengths behind the chief executive heard what sounded like 3 bursts of gunfire. Secret Service agents in a follow-up car quickly unlimbered their automatic rifles and their pistols, but the damage apparently has been done or had been done. We switch now for a direct report to Robert McNeil, NBC News, Dallas.
President Kennedy was shot at today by a gunman from a building along the route as he drove through downtown Dallas. He has been rushed to hospital bleeding. Texas Senator Ralph Yarborough says the president is seriously wounded. Mrs. Kennedy, who was sitting beside him in the open car, was not hurt, but the governor of Texas, John Connally, was also reported wounded. As the shots rang out, 3 shots as the motorcade went by, people screamed and lay down on the grass. Police immediately fanned out over a wide area. They found several witnesses, including a small boy, who said he saw a man in the window of a building overlooking the parade route with a gun in his hand. President Kennedy is now in the Parkland Memorial Hospital. An accurate estimate of his condition has not been given. Congressman Yarborough of Texas says only that the president is seriously wounded. This is Robert McNeil, NBC News, at the Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas, Texas.
The Secret Service says the president remains in the emergency room. The governor has been moved to the general operating room of Parkland Hospital in Dallas. One Secret Service man was overheard telling another there is no need to move the president because emergency facilities are entirely adequate in the emergency room. 2 Roman Catholic priests have been summoned to the emergency room where the president is. One identified as a Father Huber. Again, the president and the governor of Texas have been shot, both in critical condition in Dallas, Texas. Peter Hackus, NBC News, Washington.
It's 9 minutes after 2 o'clock. We are still awaiting any further developments Any further word from Dallas, Texas on the condition of President Kennedy and also the governor of Texas? And to bring you up to date, in case you have missed earlier reports, let's call in Glenn Wilson. Glenn?
The latest report we have from Dallas is that the president is critical. However, that's all we have so far. Now, to bring you up to date on everything that has happened, President Kennedy and Governor John Connally of Texas were cut down by an assassin's bullets as they toured downtown Dallas, Texas in an open automobile today. The president, his limp body cradled in the arms of his wife, was rushed to Parkland Hospital. The governor also was taken to Parkland. Clint Hill, a Secret Service agent assigned to Mrs. Kennedy, said he's dead as the president was lifted from the rear of the White House touring car, the famous bubble top from Washington. However, the late word we have is that he is in critical condition, and that's all we have as to his condition at this present time. The president was rushed to an emergency room in the hospital. Reporters about 5 car lengths behind the chief executive heard what sounded like 3 bursts of gunfire. Now we have later word coming in here. I'll get that to you in just a moment. Secret Service agents in the follow-up car quickly unlimbered their automatic rifles. The bubble top of the president's car was down. They drew their pistols, but the damage was done. The president was slumped over in the back seat of the car, face down. Connally lay on the floor of the rear seat. It was impossible to tell at once where Kennedy was hit, but bullet wounds in Connally's chest were plainly visible, indicating the gunfire might possibly have come from an automatic weapon. There were 3 loud bursts. Dallas, Texas motorcycle officers escorting the president quickly leaped from their bikes and raced up a grassy hill. In just a few seconds, we're going to have a direct report from NBC in Dallas. To give you a few more details, we do not know the condition of the president at this present time, other than the report from the hospital in Dallas, Texas, is that he is critical. And now we're going to join the NBC network for a direct report with the latest information they have on the attempted assassination of President Kennedy.
Now here is Edwin Newman, NBC.
The latest word on President Kennedy's condition comes from Representative Albert Thomas of Texas. He says he's been informed that Mr. Kennedy is still alive, but in very critical condition. 2 Roman Catholic priests have been summoned to the room where Mr. Kennedy is lying. Here is a bulletin just in. President Kennedy has been given blood transfusions at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas. That is where he is lying. This is an effort to save his life. The president is at Parkland Hospital after the assassination attempt against him and Governor John Connally of Texas. The president was shot in the head. Governor Connally was shot in the chest. He has been taken to the operating room. The president remains in the room to which he was originally taken because emergency facilities there are said to be completely adequate. To repeat, the president remains in the emergency room at the Parkland Hospital in Dallas because emergency facilities in that room are considered to be perfectly adequate. The president has been given blood transfusions in an attempt to save his life. 2 Roman Catholic priests have been summoned to that emergency room. A White House spokesman said someone had asked for the priests. We have not yet been told who sent for them. To recapitulate the day's events, a sniper shot President Kennedy and also Governor John Connally of Texas, with whom the president was riding as they drove through downtown Dallas today. Mr. Kennedy apparently was shot in the head, and he fell face down in the back seat of his car. It was an open car. Blood was on his head. Mrs. Kennedy was by his side. She was not hurt. She was heard to cry, "Oh no," and she tried to hold up the president's head. Governor Connally remained half-seated, slumped to the left. There was blood on his face and forehead. There was also blood on his chest. The president and the governor were then rushed to the Parkland Hospital near the Trade Mart in Dallas, Texas. The president was to speak at the Dallas Trade Mart in the course of his 3-day visit to Texas. Today was the 2nd day. Blood was spattered all over the limousine, which had been flown in especially to carry the president in the Dallas welcoming parade. Secret Service men at once drew their weapons, but it was too late to prevent the damage that had been done. I repeat, the president is still alive, but he is said by Representative Albert Thomas of Texas, one of his hosts in Dallas, to be in very critical condition. The corridors of the hospital are described by those who were there as in pandemonium. At the height of the drama in the emergency room where the president is lying, a weeping Negro woman bearing a small, bloody child rushed into the hospital. A nurse and an intern went quickly to her side. Mrs. Kennedy, as I have said before, is safe, but she is stunned by what has happened. Mrs. Connally also appears to be safe. She is stunned also. We will, of course, continue with our news bulletins moment by moment as they come to us. We now join the facilities of NBC Television. For a simultaneous broadcast, NBC correspondent Bill Ryan is speaking.
Window of a building about a block away from the cars. There are other reports that a man was seen with a high-powered rifle. There is no indication yet that whoever fired the shots at the president and the Texas governor has been found. The word from Parkland Memorial Hospital is that President Kennedy is being treated in an emergency room of the hospital, that he has received blood transfusions, that he is in critical condition but alive. There is no word on how many times he was struck by bullets or where he sustained the wounds. Now, for Washington reaction to this tragic story, we go to NBC News Washington and David Brinkley.
Bill, there isn't a great deal as yet because obviously the news has just got here. It was taken to Congress, which of course recessed immediately to wait to see what has happened. We've checked with the White House, which has told us it doesn't know any more than we know, and in fact has been listening to us to see what it could find out. The president's brother, Edward Kennedy, Teddy Kennedy, was on the floor of the Senate and was informed of the news by the Senate Democratic leader, Senator Mike Mansfield. The only word beyond that we have is that Senator Kennedy didn't know at the moment whether he would go to Texas or not. Beyond that, again, there is no particular or unexpected reaction here yet because most of Washington has just found out about it and is shocked and stunned along with everyone else. The White House, again, has no more information at the moment than we have. We'll stay here, of course, ready to bring you any at the moment it arrives. In the meantime, we'll switch back to you, Chet, Frank, Bill.
This is NBC News with the last-minute word on President Kennedy's condition. For that, we switch to Alan Bickley, station WFAA in Dallas.
President Kennedy has been shot during his tour of the city of Dallas, Texas. A presidential aide, Larry O'Brien, said he had no information on whether the president is alive, but later reports indicate from Parkland Hospital in Dallas that the president is alive, although said to be critical. This is an unconfirmed report that the president is critical. Texas Governor John Connally also was shot, has been taken to surgery in Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas. When the president was shot, Mrs. Kennedy jumped up and grabbed him, crying, "Oh no." Then the Secret Service ordered the motorcade to speed on to the hospital. Apparently, from witnesses at the scene, we can deduce that the attempted assassination was committed by a slender, white young man, about 30 years of age, probably from the vicinity of the Texas Book Depository building in downtown Dallas. Police and Secret Service men have now cordoned off that building. The center of downtown Dallas is in a virtual state of siege. They are combing the floors of the Texas Book Depository building in an effort to find the suspected assassin. This is Alan Bickley reporting for NBC News.
There has been an unconfirmed report, and I stress an unconfirmed report, that Vice President Lyndon Johnson was slightly wounded during the attempt on President Kennedy. One spectator said he saw Vice President Johnson walk into the hospital holding his arm. That is the first word we've had on that, and we have no official indication that Vice President Johnson has been hurt. To repeat, the latest word we have is that President Kennedy is still alive, but in critical, very critical condition. That word comes from Representative Albert Thomas of Texas, who has been one of the president's hosts during his intended 3-day visit to Texas. The president is in the emergency room. He has had blood transfusions. More blood of that particular type has been called for by the hospital. It is a B-positive blood drawn from the hospital bank. Fresh blood has been called for by the doctors to have it ready if additional transfusions are needed. Governor John Connally of Texas, who was riding with the president and was wounded at the same time that the president was, has been taken to the operating room. Mr. Kennedy continues to be in the emergency room. Facilities there are said to be adequate. We will be back with additional information as soon as we receive it. This is Edwin Newman, NBC News. I beg your pardon, I am told to continue because there is a bit more information. At the hospital in Dallas, police have been quickly posted in the corridors leading to the emergency room. Secret Service agents are on duty and have turned reporters away 40 feet from the door of the emergency room where the president is lying critically ill. Now, for reaction here in New York to the news of the assassination attempt against President Kennedy, who is in critical condition in Dallas, Texas, we switch to Joseph Michaels at the Stock Exchange in Wall Street.
The stock exchange itself has just suspended trading. A Board of Governors meeting was called by Keith Funston immediately after the terrible news was received, and the decision after the market was running slow and it tumbled about 2.5 points, 12 minutes behind on the ticker, with many issues suspending immediately, was that the market itself should suspend. I'm down here at Wall Street. There are lots of people here. Perhaps we can talk to some of them. Excuse me, but did you hear the news, sir?
Not quite. I couldn't hear. I was standing all the way out here.
How about you?
I didn't hear anything. I just was.
Did you know what happened?
Yes, I do.
How do you feel about it? I don't know. It's shocked. Very bad.
Terrible shock to the country and everything else. I don't know. It's unbelievable to think something like that could happen.
Do you think it's a dangerous thing for us all?
I certainly do.
Where was the FBI? How do you think the street will react to this, sir?
Well, I guess the market will go down. It always does in a tragedy.
The vote in critical condition, huh? So we hear, Tone. Do you think this will have any serious effect on the market, sir? On what? On the market? I doubt it. Why? Well, I'd have to think. I doubt very seriously. The general condition of people here was that the ones that we've talked to so far was that this is an awful thing.
This is Edwin Newman, NBC News in New York. We have an interview with an eyewitness to the shooting of President Kennedy in Dallas. I must repeat now, the president is still alive, but is described as being in very critical condition in the hospital in Dallas. He has been given blood transfusions. 2 Roman Catholic priests have been summoned to the emergency room in the hospital where the president is lying. Now, we're going to let you hear an interview with an eyewitness to the shooting that took place in Dallas a short time ago.
What is your name, ma'am?
Jane Hill.
From Dallas?
That's right.
And did you see the shooting, miss?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe what happened?
Yes, sir.
Can you do that now?
They were driving along, and we were the only people in this area on our side, and the shots came from directly across the street from us. And just as the president's car became directly even with us, we took one look at him, and he was sitting there. He and Jackie were looking at a dog that was in the middle of the seat, and about that time 2 shots rang out just as he looked up. Just as the president looked up, and these 2 shots rang out, and he grabbed his chest, and it looked like he was in pain, and he fell over in his seat, and Jackie fell over on him and said, "My God, he's been shot." After that, more shots rang out, and the car sped away.
What kind of a car was that?
What kind of a car was it? The president's car.
I mean, where did the shots come from?
The shots came from the hill.
From the hill?
Yes. It was just east of the underpass.
And
we were on the south side.
Did you look up there where the shots came from, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Did you see anyone?
I thought I saw this man running, but I looked at the president, and for a while, and I looked up there, and I thought I saw a man running, and so right after that, I guess I didn't have any better sense. I started running up there too.
And what is your name?
Jean Hill.
G-E-A-N?
J-E-A-N.
J-E-A-N. What's your address, Miss Hill?
9402 Bluff Creek.
9402 Bluff.
This is the NBC newsroom in New York with the latest news about the assassination attempt on President Kennedy. The president is in Parkland Hospital in Dallas, where an attempted assassination against him was executed about an hour ago. The president is in very critical condition. He apparently was shot in the head. Mr. Kennedy has had blood transfusions. 2 2 Roman Catholic priests were called to the emergency room where he is lying. We do not know who called them there. Governor John Connally, who was in the car with the president, also was shot. He has been taken to the operating room in the hospital. An assistant to Governor Connally said he asked him how it happened, and the governor replied, "I don't know. I guess from the back they got the president too." The governor was shot just below the shoulder blade in the back. There had been a report that Vice President Lyndon Johnson was slightly wounded. We now hear from Mrs. Lyndon Johnson, the Vice President's wife, that the Vice President is fine. Asked whether her husband had been wounded, she shook her head negatively. Mrs. Kennedy was riding with the President when he was wounded. She cried, "Oh no," as she saw him shot and cushioned his head as he fell. We now join the NBC television network telecast for the latest information.
Anxious members of the White House staff gathered, including Major General Chester V. Clifton, military aide to the President, and Brigadier General Godfrey McHugh, the Air Force aide. Mrs. Evelyn Lincoln, the President's Secretary, Pamela Tenure, Press Secretary to Mrs. Kennedy, and other members of the staff were shown to a special waiting room not far from the emergency room area where the President was lying. As Frank McGee has reported on direct word from our correspondent in Dallas, a crowd is gathering outside Parkland Hospital in Dallas.
There's also this, Chet, repeating what we got from Fort Worth, that sheriff's officers have taken a young man into custody and are questioning him, but there is no indication that any charges have been placed against him. There is no indication that he is directly involved in this attempt on the life of President Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally.
Bill, I think we have a picture of the President and Mrs. Kennedy as they arrived in Dallas this morning, and I have some fragmentary copy on the first speech which the President delivered in Dallas. This is the picture of the President and Mrs. Kennedy.
I think the camera that has you, Chet, is the one that would have to get the picture.
Me. I'll hold it up over here. This is the picture of the first family, or the President and Mrs. Kennedy, rather, arriving in Dallas only a couple of hours before the assassination attempt. The first speech that the President delivered in Dallas, speaking in an area where supporters are booming Senator Barry Goldwater's chances for the Republican nomination, the President said that ignorance and misinformation, if allowed to prevail in foreign policy, handicaps the country's security. This was a speech prepared for the Dallas Citizens Council, the Dallas Assembly, and the Graduate Research Center of the Southwest. He did not specifically mention Senator Goldwater by name. The President said, "In a world of complex and continuing problems, in a world full of frustrations and irritations, America's leadership must be guided by the lights of learning and reason, or else those who confuse rhetoric with reality and the plausible with the possible will gain the ascendancy with their seemingly swift and simple solutions to every world problem."
Chet, there's also this. In Washington, the two president's brothers, his two brothers, Attorney General Robert Kennedy and his younger brother, Senator Edward Kennedy, are on their way to Andrews Air Force Base. They will fly to Dallas. Additional details from the hospital. Vice President Lyndon Johnson has not been injured in this attack on President Kennedy and Texas Governor Connally. The Vice President is somewhere in the same hospital where the President is being treated, Parkland Memorial in Dallas. It is reported he is badly shocked by the shooting, that doctors are trying to keep him as quiet as possible, and that he is under heavy Secret Service and police protection. It's also noted that throughout the trip in Texas, when the President and the Vice President have been in the same motorcade, they have been kept in separate cars, a precaution against just such an attempt as was obviously made today. Chet?
I referred a moment ago and read an excerpt from the speech which President...
This is Edwin Newman in the NBC newsroom in New York. This information from Dallas. President Kennedy was given the last holy rites of the Roman Catholic Church today. That was, of course, after he was shot down by a would-be assassin while he was riding in a caravan through downtown Dallas. A Catholic priest who helped perform the last rites said he did not believe the president was dead. The Catholic priest, in other words, said he believed the president was still alive. The priest left the emergency operating room at Parkland Hospital, where the president is lying, and walked out of the hospital. We hear from Washington that Attorney General Robert Kennedy and the president's youngest brother, Senator Edward Kennedy, are on their way to Andrews Air Force Base to catch a plane for Dallas. Also in Washington, the director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, has, of course, instructed the Dallas office of the FBI to make an all-out investigation of the attempt on the life of President Kennedy and of Governor John Connally of Texas. Governor Connally was shot in the back below the shoulder blade. Here is a flash from Dallas. 2 priests who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds suffered in the assassination attempt today. I repeat, a flash from Dallas. 2 priests who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds. This is the latest information we have from Dallas. We are, of course, standing by to give you all available information as it comes to us. I will repeat with the greatest regret this flash. 2 priests who were with President Kennedy say he has died of bullet wounds. Now we join the NBC television network for the latest news.
Now, there apparently is word that this AP flash, this report from the 2 priests, that the president has died of bullet wounds, is confirmed. We will attempt now to get to station WBAP-TV in Fort Worth, Dallas, for confirmation. We go to newsman Tom Murphy.
Substantiating this, but not confirming it, is a report about 5 minutes ago by the Dallas Police Department to all of its officers that the president had died. Some 3 to 5 minutes later, the AP flashed that 2 priests at the hospital say the president is dead. Charles Murphy, returning now to NBC in New York.
Word from 2 sources. Again, it is not...
Bill, excuse me. We have NBC's Bob McNeil on the line now with a report. Please go ahead, Bob. White House Press Secretary Malcolm Kilduff has just announced that President Kennedy died at approximately 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, which is about 35 minutes ago.
After being shot at.
After being shot.
By an unknown assailant.
By an unknown assailant.
During a motorcade drive through downtown Dallas.
During a motorcade drive through downtown Dallas.
The president died.
The president died.
Approximately 25 minutes.
Approximately 25 minutes.
After the attack took place.
After the attack took place.
He had been rushed, bleeding and unconscious.
He had been rushed, bleeding and unconscious.
To the Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas.
To the Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas.
And was given blood transfusions.
And was given blood transfusions.
About 15 minutes ago.
About 15 minutes ago, reports NBC's Bob McNeil from Dallas, to whom I'm talking now.
A priest emerged.
A priest emerged.
After having given the president.
After having given the president.
The last rites.
The last rites.
Just before the announcement of the president's death was made.
Just before the announcement of the president's death was made.
Vice President Lyndon Johnson.
Vice President Lyndon Johnson.
Emerged grim-faced.
Emerged grim-faced.
And was driven off with a police escort.
And was driven away with a police escort.
To assume.
To assume.
The constitutional responsibilities.
The constitutional responsibilities.
Of the presidency.
Of the presidency.
A casket.
A casket.
Has just been brought into the emergency ward.
Has just been brought into the emergency ward.
Of this hospital.
Of this hospital.
For President Kennedy.
For President Kennedy.
The attack took place.
The attack took place.
As the president was just completing.
As the president was just completing.
What amounted to.
What amounted to.
A triumphal drive.
A triumphal drive.
Through downtown Dallas.
Through downtown Dallas.
Encountering the biggest.
Encountering the largest.
And in some ways the most friendly crowds.
And in some ways the most friendly crowds.
Of his 2-day Texas tour.
Of his 2-day Texas tour.
Dallas police.
Dallas police.
Had put into effect
the
most stringent security precautions in the city's history.
The most stringent security precautions in the city's history.
Because they had anticipated.
Because they had anticipated.
There might be some demonstrations.
There might be some demonstrations
against President Kennedy,
like
those which marked the visit
similar to those which marked the visit
of UN Ambassador Adlai Stevenson
on
October 24th. Mrs. Kennedy, who was sitting beside the president, in the open car, was not hurt. However, the governor of Texas, John Connally, who was also in the car, was wounded reportedly in the chest. And more blood.
Repeat, Bob.
Further supplies of blood.
For
transfusions for the governor. Have just been brought into the hospital. The shooting came. According to witnesses. From the second floor. Of a building called the Texas School Book Depository. Which is about 100 yards. From the tree-lined parkway. On which the president was driving when the shooting occurred. 3 shots were heard. Frank, that's about all I can tell you at the moment.
Bob, thank you very much. We'll keep the line open.
Okay, we'll keep the line open.
That was a report from NBC's Robert McNeil at the hospital in Dallas, Texas, confirming by way of word from the White House press secretary that President Kennedy is dead.
The death, according to Malcolm Kilduff, who was acting as the president's secretary on this trip, came roughly 39 minutes ago at about 1 o'clock Dallas time. There is further word that Vice President Lyndon Johnson was taken from the hospital and he was not wounded. He has been taken from the hospital off to a secluded place. He will assume
the last rites were administered to President Kennedy by Father Oscar Huber of Holy Trinity Church in Dallas. Of course, at this point, the information that comes to us is fragmentary. It has all to be pulled together. There was an eyewitness description of the scene from a man who was 15 feet away when the president was shot. This man is Charles Brehm, B-R-E-H-M. He said the president was waving and the first shot hit him and that awful look crossed his face. The president died 44 minutes ago, 1 o'clock Central Standard Time in Parkland Hospital in Dallas, the result of an assassination attempt against him as he was riding through the streets of Dallas in a car with his wife, with Governor John Connally of Texas, and with Mrs. Connally. Mrs. Kennedy and Mrs. Connally are safe, though the last word we've had describes both of them as stunned. Governor Connally was wounded. He was shot in the back below the shoulder blade, was taken to the emergency operating room. Vice President Lyndon Johnson, who was not injured and who was riding in a separate car from that in which Mr. Kennedy was riding, was taken from Parkland Hospital under heavy police escort. He is to be sworn in as the next president of the United States. This attempt on President Kennedy's life was the third within 30 years on an American president. President Franklin Roosevelt was shot at when riding in an open car in Miami with Mayor Anton Cermak of Chicago. The president was not hit. Cermak died. President Truman was shot at when he was in Blair House in Washington. He was not hit. President Kennedy was shot at today and was killed.
The American flag above the White House has just been lowered to half-mast, a solemn confirmation of the death of President Kennedy. As the flag was lowered, large numbers of people outside the White House noted the flag flying at half-mast. Most of them did not know what had happened. They talked to the White House guards, who had then informed them the President of the United States is dead. Large numbers of people out there now, probably about 400 or 500. They're standing, watching the activity as limousines come into the west side of the White House. Senator Hubert Humphrey arrived about 20 minutes ago. Reporters are still coming in, photographers. There's been contact with various congressmen, but still nothing more official about plans for President Lyndon Johnson to assume the office. This is Robert Goralski, NBC News at the White House.
This is Morgan Beatty,
NBC News, New York, taking over from this time. There's considerable confusion as to exactly where these rifle shots came from. As we could tell from our report down in Dallas from our own staff man, it's not clear whether or not they came from a building or from an area close to the underpasses, a triple group of underpasses, or whether it came from a building. Now, Senator Yarborough of Texas is giving us this kind of information. These are quotes. These are quotes from the senator just right after the assassination occurred. You could tell, he said, that something awful and tragic had happened. He said, I could see a Secret Service man in the president's car, leaning on the car with his hands in anger, anguish, and despair. I knew something tragic had happened. Yarborough had counted 3 rifle shots, others have said there were 2, as the presidential limousine left downtown Dallas through a triple underpass. The shots were fired from above. Now, that we're sure of. Possibly from one of the bridges or from a nearby building. That's the senator's view. But another witness, television reporter, said he saw a gun emerge from an upper story of a warehouse commanding an unobstructed view of the presidential car. We've already had fleeting references to this warehouse building and a gun emerging from a window. So, you see, we still don't have enough information, and there are people under arrest. The sheriff's office in Dallas has several persons under arrest. And, of course, the standard report is that they have a white man, about 30 years old, under arrest, and a rifle has been recovered from the scene of the shooting, and it was a foreign-made rifle. Of course, this kind of reporting is very difficult at this time. The police themselves are busy trying to organize, along with the Secret Service and other government agencies, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. John Edgar Hoover has issued orders to his men to cooperate, and they have not yet coordinated all of the information they have. But it's quite certain that they have a great deal more information about the assassination of President Kennedy than they are revealing at this time. And now we switch to John Lavacek in Miami.
Havana Radio has just broken into its regular news broadcast with a bulletin and is broadcasting the news of President Kennedy's death to the Cuban people. The radio announcer, a woman, is broadcasting the regular United Press International dispatch from the United States. She is detailing all of the information she has at this time. This is John Lavacek, NBC News in Miami.
It's also clear from the reports we have that the Secret Service agents assigned directly to the president, that is, the men in the car or around the car with him, were almost certain he had been killed from the beginning. The president was shot, we can now either repeat or confirm, through the right temple, and the bullet went cleanly through his head. The White House physician has now stated it was a simple case of a bullet straight through the head. At least one Secret Service man at the entrance of the hospital kept murmuring. One of Mrs. Kennedy's Secret Service men kept murmuring as the car went up to the hospital and the president's body was being taken out that he's dead, he's dead. I'm sure he didn't know at that time he was dead, but Secret Service men know you can't be shot through the head, temple to temple, without being about as close to death as a man can be. And the question of administering the oath to the Vice President, Mr. Johnson, has still not been resolved, but the Secret Service has thrown an extraordinary guard around the Vice President. Mrs. Johnson was seen by reporters not too many minutes ago, and she was asked how the Vice President was, now the President of the United States, and she said, he's fine. We repeat what we've told you before, that Vice President Johnson was not shot. The other man shot was Governor Connally of Texas. And the governor, by the way, has talked with Mr. Huber, his principal assistant. He is in apparently fairly good condition. He has said that he saw the whole thing, and they got the president, too, he told his assistants. The doctors have discovered that Governor Connally of Texas has been shot just under the shoulder blade in the back, and the seriousness of it has not yet been determined, but he's conscious. He's able to talk to his friends, and Mr. Huber said that the governor had asked him, he had asked the governor what he could do for him, and the governor had asked him, please just take care of Mrs. Connally for me. So apparently the governor of Texas is not injured as badly as it would appear that he had been at first. Incidentally, NBC News reports from Dallas that a car believed to be the assassin's getaway car has been seized in Fort Worth, and a suspect, a man still not identified, has been taken into custody. Also, a policeman also was shot and killed during the assassination. Incidentally, Fort Worth, as you know, is very close to Dallas, and a car could have got to Fort Worth with no trouble at all, provided the assassins had planned in advance how to get away from the motorcade in Dallas. Incidentally, a Negro woman rushed into the hospital where President Kennedy was taken with a wounded child. Now, whether the child had been injured in some other kind of situation or whether in the situation that occurred during the assassination of the president was not clear. The woman and the child were taken to the emergency quarters of the hospital. Incidentally, from Rome, the word is spreading very fast. England, we've heard from Havana, Europe, all are on the alert to news of the assassination of President Kennedy. From Rome, we have a report from Vatican City. Cardinal Francis Spellman of New York said tonight that he was shocked and grief-stricken to hear of President John Kennedy's death. These kind of statements, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be getting regularly and at frequent intervals for many hours to come. Incidentally, if the president was indeed alive, as most reports indicate he was, he lived about an hour after the sniper had cut him down in his limousine near downtown Dallas. The president was 46 years old, and of course, if it had been possible for him to have survived this shot, his vigor unquestionably would have pulled him through, but it was not. And incidentally, if you have any questions about the vice presidency, automatically the mantle of the presidency falls to the vice president on the death of a president. That means that he doesn't have to take any oath of office immediately. He is President of the United States. That's Lyndon B. Johnson of Texas, and as we reported to you, he was unhurt because he was automatically kept in another automobile so that there would not be the double close risk of the president and the vice president together in a situation of this kind, particularly in travel areas. And now let's see what they're doing on NBC TV News at this point. They have new reports on the president's assassination.
The practice she's developed the last couple of days took the initiative in going over to the fence, and she and the president walked all along the fence, shaking hands with both hands, and the crowd was really delirious with them. And this kind of reaction was something like the reaction that was encountered in the big crowds all the way through the town. Very friendly. I saw only one hostile sign all the way through the motorcade, which went about 10 miles. And then suddenly, in the middle of this bright sunshine, the friendly crowd, and nobody expecting anything, these three muffled shots were heard. And it couldn't have been a more startling, gruesome contrast to the very pleasant, sunny, friendly atmosphere that he'd received, despite all the warnings that things were going to be difficult for him here in Dallas.
Why was that, Bob? Because of Adlai Stevenson's recent visit?
Well, this had been the thing that made the police worry, and Dallas got such a bad name around the world after the attack on Stevenson that the authorities were determined that there would be no repetition of this. You remember the ambassador was, someone spat on him and someone hit him over the head with a poster. They mobilized a third of their entire city police force with extra paddy wagons around the corner and everything else, and put on a strong propaganda campaign in the newspapers and on the radio and TV stations to make sure that the name of Dallas was not dragged in the mud again by any unfavorable incident when the president came. And that is why it was such a contrast.
What is the situation in the room where you are at the hospital now?
Well, I'm in a little small waiting room where emergency patients wait to be taken into the operating rooms where they're treated. And there are a few policemen who are the only ones left in the long corridor leading to the room with double swinging doors, behind which we assume the president's body is being placed in the bronze coffin, which was taken in about half an hour ago, and from which we expect it to come out shortly.
Bob, we have a still photograph here in the studio that has just moved, and it shows a man and a woman and what looks like two small children lying on the ground. I understand you saw these people.
Yes, well, they were the first people I went to. I must have got there shortly before that picture was taken, when I jumped out of the press bus, and they, in common with many other people, were screaming and lying down in the grass to escape from the shooting.
Now, Bob, again, about the area or the building from which the shot apparently was fired. Could you describe that for us and tell us about how far away it was from the car and how they would have been able to see the car from that distance?
Yes, well, I'll describe the scene. There was, as you come out of the main street of downtown Dallas, which was packed with people, it leads into a parkway called the Triple Underpass. And that parkway, which is lined with trees and lawns, takes a bend. And behind some trees in the set of service road is a brick building of about 8 stories, which is called the Texas School Book Depository.
I see. So
according to witnesses, 2 of them who I talked to and the police talked to, say they saw a man with a gun in the, one said the 2nd floor, another one said the 4th floor, a window of that building. Now, from either floor, Frank, he would be able to see over the low trees to about 100 yards away where the president's car was.
An unobstructed view, Bob?
I would think so. I was not able to go up to either of those windows, so I couldn't see for myself, but looking at it from the ground, it looked as though it would be. The president, therefore, must have had presented either a profile to the assailant, if he was, in fact, in those windows where the witnesses say, and or his 3/4 back, because his car had actually passed the direct line from the window. You see, the way it went is the car would have approached the window head-on, then turned left and gone down a slight decline under the underpass. Just a moment, Frank.
Yes, Bob. That seems to fit, Bill, with what he said. The word that we had here was the president was struck in the right temple. Yes, Bob.
The body has been carried out.
Go ahead. Say again, Bob.
The president's body has just been carried out of the hospital in the bronze casket, and it was accompanied by his military aide, Major General Clifton.
And
it has been placed in an ambulance. I understand it is being taken straight to the air base where he landed to be flown back to Washington.
I see, Bob.
The crowds have all been moved away from the door by the local police and the Secret Service. I can hear the motorcycle escort outside with the ambulance starting up. And the president's body, with the police motorcycle escort, is now pulling away from the hospital. It is about 1.5 hours since he was shot. The president has been dead for about 1 hour and 7 minutes. Vice President Lyndon Johnson, who is now constitutionally the president, left immediately after the president's death was confirmed, and with a police escort went off to the airport, presumably to go straight to Washington to assume the constitutional responsibilities of the president.
Bob, returning to your earlier narrative, you had just taken us to the point where the president's car had turned, and I was about to ask.
Now, there were 3 cars behind him with Secret Service and several Texas congressmen, and then I was in the first press bus, the front of the first press bus, which came behind those. And just as we turned the corner, about 40 feet behind the president's car, I heard 3 shots.
Now, Bob, was the president seated or standing at that time?
The president was seated because there were very few people at that point. It was a thin crowd at that exact point. Most of the crowd had been concentrated a few hundred yards back. The president was seated, Mrs. Kennedy was seated, but when I heard shots, I saw people fall to the ground and was not looking for the moment at the president. The car immediately disappeared under the underpass and speeded up to go straight to the hospital. And I left the press box and went to this building from which shots reportedly came.
Mm-hmm. What sort of a building is it, Bob?
Well, it is I told you the title. It's the Texas School Book Depository. It's a orangey brick building of about 8 floors, and it was showing an expanse to the street of maybe about 8 windows wide in the front.
Well, Bob, from the point where they think the man with the gun might have been seen to where the president was actually felled, would it have been possible for him to have been struck by a bullet in the right temple? That's his
I believe that if he was using a high-powered rifle with a telescopic sight, one policeman told me he understood it was a high-powered rifle. I don't know about the telescopic sight. I assume that from that distance it could be.
I see.
Could be.
About how fast was the president's motorcade going at the time of the fire?
It was about, by that time, having just gone around the corner, it was probably between 15 and 20 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. And Vice President Lyndon Johnson was how far behind?
I'm not sure, Frank, which car. There was a jumble of congressmen in the car immediately behind, and I'm not sure which car Vice President Johnson was in.
And then you say, of course, that the motorcade speeded up immediately and rushed toward the hospital.
Disappeared under the underpass, and I had jumped out by that time and was running with the police. They thought the assailant had fled over some railroad tracks, and they chased him through what they thought was the assailant, through several trains, standing on the track.
And now we have urgent bulletins from Dallas again. We reported to you not too long ago that the report that a policeman had been shot in connection with the president's assassination, but we had no further at the moment. Now we have detail to a certain extent. A Secret Service agent and a Dallas policeman were shot and killed today some distance from the area where President Kennedy was assassinated. We have no more information on that, but from the Secret Service, Lieutenant Eric Kaminsky reports the assassin weapon appears to have been a high-powered Army or Japanese rifle of about .25 caliber. The rifle had a scope on it, the same kind of rifle, apparently, that Medgar Evers, the Negro leader, was shot with in Mississippi. The entire building, as we've noticed before, or told you before, this was a warehouse near the underpass where the president was traveling. But the entire building, this warehouse where the sniper was located, was evacuated sometime before the president passed by. People were working in the building, however, at the time of the shooting. Dallas Police Inspector J.H. Sawyer says police found the remains of fried chicken and paper on the 5th floor of that building. Apparently, the person who had been there quite a while. And after the fatal shots were fired, the stricken president's Secret Service, of course, the driver, raced away immediately to the hospital. And we have further reports at this time from Dallas to piece out this story as fast as we possibly can. One of the prime reporters on station WFAA, the NBC affiliate in Dallas, is standing by. Pierce Alman, WFAA Dallas, will you please come in?
About 12:15 today, I and a couple of other people from the station decided to walk about 4 blocks north from our studios to greet the President of the United States as he came through Dallas on a motorcade. He had left Dallas Love Field. He had a warm reception there. He had caused some consternation to the Secret Service agents around him by leaving the yellow marked guide lanes as he got off his jet and began greeting people who were standing alongside the wire fence at Dallas Love Field. Without incident, he got into his convertible, open top, and flanked by Secret Service men, began his ride through downtown Dallas. The reception was warm, it was enthusiastic, and as he came down Main Street on the way to the Stemmons Avenue Trade Mart, where he was to deliver an address sponsored by the Dallas Citizens Council, he turned the corner just before going under a triple underpass. I was standing at the corner of Elm Streets and Houston Streets here in Dallas, Texas, and as he turned, I couldn't help think to myself how vigorous, how healthy he looked. He was tanned. He seemed to be feeling good. He was waving to the crowd. I began applauding like the rest, and the man to my right and the woman to my left. She commented on Jackie's lovely dress. And suddenly we heard a reverberating explosion. My first thought was not to look at the president. I guess the thought that anybody would take a shot at the President of the United States didn't even go through my mind at the time. I rather looked around as if to say, well, someone has fireworks and it's in pretty poor taste at this moment. The President ducked, at least that's what it looked like to me. I thought this was a natural reaction. I didn't realize at the time that he had been shot and was slumping. There were 3 shots fired. They were spaced. They didn't seem to come from any automatic weapon of any kind. Rather careful and deliberate aim. A Secret Service man was killed. No one seemed galvanized into instant action. Everyone was rather stunned. And suddenly, the Lincoln convertible sped away at top speed, and guns appeared on everyone around. The police came around, flinging us to the ground, saying, hit the dirt. And they began not returning fire because of the crowd, but rather looking for someone at which to shoot. I ran, along with a few other people, over to the top of a knoll, which was just north of the site. It was about 20 feet. Everyone seemed to be running in that direction. Very foolish people, now that we look back on it. We couldn't see anything, though. There's a large building, about 7 or 8 stories, on the corner of Elm and Houston Streets. It's a Texas school book depository. It prides itself on being the largest in the state. It has several floors that are not used too often, that stack dusty books. And we wondered to ourselves at the time how it was possible to cover all the open windows in this building, as well as all the open space around. How the Secret Service, how the FBI men, how the county sheriff's officers, and how the Dallas police officers could do this. Well, evidently they could not successfully. We went into the Texas School Book Depository building. The president, as he left the scene, was stretched out on the turtleback of this car, and he was holding Jackie, or I guess Jackie was holding him. It took him about 5 minutes to get to Parkland Hospital, and I didn't learn that he was dead until I got back here to the station. The reaction, I think, among the crowds who are now standing around streets in downtown Dallas, tuned into their radios, they're just standing around. Nobody's really saying much, except it's just unbelievable. And why? And I guess we'll never know the answer to that.
I guess maybe we will, too. And if we don't know it, unfortunately, our, shall we use the word colleagues from Moscow are already saying why the President of the United States was shot before they have even the slightest idea. From Moscow, the Soviet news agency TASS reports that the President of the United States was shot in Dallas, Texas, and died later, and it adds an attempt was made on his life by persons believed to be among extreme right-wing elements. As usual, the Moscow reporters go off half-cocked and they make everything fit their social philosophy. They may turn out to be right, but that will be merely an accident because, as we have heard from Pierce Alman, WFAA in Dallas, at the moment nobody knows exactly how or why. Reaction is coming in from around the world continually. Reaction from the Pope. He has taken note of the death of the President of the United States with sadness. And from Cardinal Spellman of New York, and here in New York City, where President Kennedy frequently visits, we have Joseph Michaels. He's at City Hall in New York.
Morgan, I'm near Trinity Church. Trinity Church, the famous Trinity Church at the head of Wall Street. This was a huge blow to everyone. The stock exchange closed at 2:09, closed by the Board of Governors when the floor was in a chaotic condition. Perhaps you can hear the bells behind me now. Trinity Church's bells are ringing again. Our reaction is not from presidents or heads of church, but from his fellow citizens, among them first a young Negro.
Losing Kennedy is like losing a father, because he's been like a father to everyone in this nation. And it hurts everyone in this nation. We're going to miss him very much. I don't know why they did it. Kennedy didn't do nothing to nobody. On the contrary, he tried to help everybody in this home. For everybody, he tried to help as much as he can. I don't know why and how they could do anything like this to him.
Sir, what will it do to business?
Well, I don't think it'll affect business at all, sir. I believe that we had a great president who is doing a lot for business, and I believe that he set a trend that Americans will recognize and follow, and I think, if anything, it will help us become more dedicated to helping our businesses and helping our nation.
What will it do to the causes that he believed in?
Well, I believe the causes that President Kennedy believed in are the causes that all Americans believe in. Whether or not someone said they were a Kennedy man prior to this, I'm sure that we all join today in grieving for him and in recognizing that he had at his heart the hearts of all Americans, and that he was striving to accomplish for this nation what we all would want to.
White House Secretary Malcolm Kilduff said the president's body would be flown to Washington this afternoon, almost immediately. The Dallas Sheriff's Department says a rifle has been found in a staircase on the 5th floor of that warehouse building near the scene of the assassination. And now we have confirmation of exactly the kind of weapon. It was a 7.65 Mauser rifle. German-made Army rifle, had a telescopic sight with one shell left in the chamber. 3 spent shells were found nearby. As you've noted before, we've had reports that there were either 2 or 3 shots. The police credit 3 shots with being fired, and incidentally, the 3rd shot apparently struck Governor Connally of Texas because he was wounded in 2 places. One place is, of course, of no importance, but the wound in the back under the shoulder blade is the one for which Governor Connally of Texas is now being operated on. His condition is still serious, although his physicians feel that the vital points, his pulse, his reaction generally mean that he may well pull through. We have a bulletin from New York now. The League of New York Theaters announces that all Broadway theaters will be closed tonight. Willard Keith, spokesman for the League, says all League members' shows on the road also will be closed tonight in the beginning of the period of mourning for the death of the President of the United States. NBC News has learned that the military officers charged with arranging for state funerals are at the White House at this moment, discussing possible funeral plans. Mr. Kennedy is the first president to die in office under the new Defense Department setup. So protocol will have to be written as it is. That is, the idea of the military handling a funeral of the President of the United States is an entirely new one, and they will have to set precedents at this time. For those of you who may not know about it, one of the important facts of life in Washington is that the military is in charge of the District of Columbia in many ways. The Capitol building and so on is the only building there that's excluded from their direct charge, and they are indirectly in charge of that. So that it is entirely fitting, as was done a few years ago, that the Defense Department should handle affairs such as the one that we have regretfully and sadly before us, a funeral of another President of the United States, and this one in the terrible tradition of Lincoln and McKinley. The Army will have charge as usual. There are caissons and ceremonial horses at Fort Myer, Virginia, of course, along with units of troops ready for use in such capacities, so that Fort Myer will take charge of the funeral arrangements for President John Kennedy of the United States. And now more reaction from the Capitol. We switch now to NBC's Robert McCormick at the Capitol for reaction in the House of Representatives.
Actually, this is reaction from the Senate. One of the first members of Congress to get the bad news was one of President Kennedy's oldest friends, Senate Democratic leader Mansfield. He turned pale when he heard the news, and then he and Dirksen together left the chamber to call the White House. Here is what Senator Mansfield had to tell us later.
The passing of John Fitzgerald Kennedy is not only a tragedy for the nation which he so ably represented, but is, I think, also a mark upon the respectability and the responsibility of some of our citizens. This good, this decent, this kindly man, this harassed man who had so much on his shoulders and received from some people so little in the way of support in return, this man is now gone to his reward. And I will miss him as a personal friend. The nation will miss him as a great president, and the world will miss him as a great leader. One of the fondest memories I can recall is the cooperation and the support which the distinguished senator from Illinois, Mr. Dirksen, the minority leader of the Senate, gave to the President of the United States, a Democrat, time and time again when the interests of the nation were at stake. And I know how grateful he was to you for the many contributions you made, and I'm just as grateful, and the nation is too. Words are useless to express one's true feelings at a moment like this.
A person's perplexity is just too great in a tragic moment like this.
That last voice was Senate Republican leader Dirksen.
This is the nation station, WLW in Cincinnati, your Clear Channel service.
Ironically, the chair of the Senate was occupied by the president's brother when the president was shot. Senator Edward Kennedy had been presiding over a rather dull session, A Richard Riedel, who mans one of the doors to the Senate lobby, brought the news into the Senate of what had happened and had the terrible job of telling Senator Kennedy that his brother had been shot. And here is Mr. Riedel's story.
Richard Riedel, which you already given my name. Press liaison, which means contact between the Washington correspondents, members of the press gallery, radio, television correspondents, White House news photographers, and the periodical press, with the senators on the floor, arranging appointments, asking them questions. In the 45 years I have been on the staff of the Senate, since September 27, 1918, when I was a 9-year-old boy and a page for 4 years, this is one of the hardest blows and one of the most moving, tragic experiences that I have ever known to sweep over the Senate. I may, if there's time later, mention when President Roosevelt died and President Truman, Vice President, then was presiding when the word of his death came. Well, the tickers in the lobby, AP and UP tickers, are read by senators and staff members for routine information. Phyllis Rock of the staff of Senator Morse of Oregon was in the lobby by herself reading the ticker. She turned to one of my assistants, Tom Pelican, who is with Senator Long of Missouri in his office part of the time, and said the president has been shot. Tom rushed out to tell me. I immediately went into the Senate chamber in front of the desk of Majority Leader Senator Mike Mansfield, raised my voice so that he and the senators at the surrounding desks could hear, and said, "Senators, the president has been shot." It, of course, was like a shock wave, a jolt. I crossed the aisle to the Republican side, where Senator Dirksen was seated, and in the same manner told Senator Dirksen and the Republican senators who were at adjacent desks, with, of course, the same shock reaction and stunned expression on their faces. I then happened to recall that a few moments before, the president's brother, Senator Edward Kennedy of Massachusetts, was presiding over the Senate. I turned and he was still occupying the chair. I knew that someone would have to inform him. And I thought I might as well. It was a very difficult job because of the family relationship as well as the friendship of the senators to the president. I rushed up to the chair and said, Senator Kennedy, your brother, the president, has been shot." He gave a jerk to his body tensed, but he was absolutely calm. And as I recall, Senator Kennedy, then presiding over the Senate, when he heard this awful news, said no. And that was all. In an orderly manner, he gathered up the papers on his desk that his routine office work that he brings when he presides over the Senate, so that he can conserve the time, the long hours presiding over the Senate by working at his office work. I walked off the rostrum with him with my arm around Senator Kennedy, patting his shoulders, and said, "Senator, if there's anything any of us can do, let us know. My own suggestion would be that you contact the Air Force and have them rush you out to Texas to your brother's side in a military jet."
Well, of course, that turns out now to be unnecessary because the president's body is being flown back to Washington and it's expected to arrive there at 5:30 p.m. And in that connection, we can report that President Johnson is expected to take the oath of office as President of the United States aboard an airliner before flying immediately back to the nation's capital. The entire Kennedy party, of course, is flying back immediately to Washington. And from Dallas, the mystery concerning exactly how and why this assassination occurred seems to increase rather than decrease with the passing of time and the gaining of more information. The Dallas Police Department has arrested a 24-year-old man, Lee H. Oswald, in connection with the slaying of a Dallas policeman shortly after President Kennedy was assassinated. The man is also being interrogated to see if he had any connection with the slaying of the president. Oswald was pulled screaming and yelling from the Texas Theater in the Oak Cliff area of Dallas. He brandished a pistol. Officers took it away from him after a scuffle. Police officer M.N. McDonald, who was cut across the face in the scuffle, quoted Oswald as saying after he was subdued, "Well, it's all over now." That may or may not mean anything in connection with the assassination of the president. A large crowd was congregated around the theater and witnessed the arrest. Police had to hold the crowds back because many apparently connected the arrested man with the slaying of the president and wanted to get at the man. The officer who was slain earlier was J.D. Tippit. He'd been killed by a man answering the description of Oswald in the neighborhood a short time before. Tippit had been slain with a pistol. As you know, the assassination of the president was accomplished by a German Mauser 7.65 rifle. Robert Kennedy has left his Virginia estate, his Virginia home, for the airport to fly to Texas. But whether or not he was intercepted at the airport and told to remain in Washington, we do not know. And we also repeat to you that the identity of the assassin of President Kennedy, or assassins in case there were more than one, is not immediately known. We do know that he was shot from the 5th floor of a warehouse opposite the highway where the tragic event took place. Dr. Malcolm Perry, the attending surgeon at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, said when he arrived at the emergency room, "I noticed the president was in critical condition with the wound of the neck and head." When asked if possibly the wounds could have been made by 2 bullets, he said he did not know. He said immediate resumptive measures were taken, and Dr. Kemp Clark, chief of neurosurgery, was called along with several other members of the staff. Dr. Perry said they arrived immediately, but at this point the president's condition was critical and moribund, meaning that he was dying. A tracheotomy was performed to assist the president's breathing. The doctors said an oxygen machine was used, and an electrocardiograph machine was attached to record any heartbeat. When asked to specify, Dr. Perry said the entrance wound was in the front of the head. Before, we had been told it was from temple to temple. Well, of course, that could be in front of the head. Former President Dwight Eisenhower today called the assassination of President Kennedy a despicable act. The former president, in a statement issued from his suite at a hotel in New York, said this: "I share the sense of shock and dismay that all Americans feel at the despicable act that resulted in the death of our nation's president. Mrs. Eisenhower and I also join with all other citizens in expressing our personal grief and prayerful concern to Mrs. Kennedy and all other members of the family." Take note of that one statement about our nation's president. Oftentimes people confuse the person of the man in the White House with the office of the presidency. No doubt the assassins did that. They do not recognize, they could not, the terrible harm they're doing to 180 million people and the chief office of those people, not to a mere man named John F. Kennedy. Comment from Chief Justice Earl Warren. He says, "I was stunned and shocked to hear of the president's death." It's interesting to note that Chief Justice Warren had sworn President Kennedy in as the chief executive of our nation. And now more details on Moscow, the way the news has been broken to the people of Russia. Moscow Radio broke into its home services news bulletin to tell Soviet listeners that President Kennedy had been shot. This was before the news of the president's death had reached Moscow through official channels. The Home Service in Moscow is a service beamed directly to all newspaper offices in the Russian republics, and it is relayed from there to various radio stations throughout Soviet Russia. From Dateline, Nevada, actor Peter Lawford, the president's brother-in-law, when told of the assassination, cried, "Oh, my God." Ladies and gentlemen, a bulletin from Dallas. Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as President of the United States at about 1:38 p.m. Central Standard Time today. That was about 6 minutes ago. The oath was administered by United States District Judge Sarah T. Hughes. For the first time in the history of the United States, a woman official has sworn in a President of the United States. So now, apparently, Mr. Johnson will take another plane and fly immediately to the capital of the United States, where President Kennedy's body will be taken, and the planes are expected to arrive in Washington about 5:30 p.m. The Pentagon officials in charge, the military officials of the Pentagon, have already taken charge of funeral arrangements for President Kennedy. There will be a lying in state in the rotunda of the Capitol, as there has been in the case of all presidents and in the case of many prominent Americans, including the late Senator Robert Taft. The president will lie in state very near the place where Abraham Lincoln lay, where President McKinley, another victim of an assassin, lay after his assassination. President Kennedy becomes the fourth president of the United States who was assassinated in office. Another one was shot and wounded, President Teddy Roosevelt. And now for more on European reaction. We've already told you that Prime Minister Hume of Great Britain and several members of his cabinet have been informed of the death of the president. They've been kept in steady touch with the situation from the moment the shot was fired in Dallas to the death of the president and beyond. For reaction now of a more general nature, we take you to Kenneth Bernstein in London. Ken, are you there?
Yes, Morgan.
Would you give us European reaction, and then let's discuss this matter?
Well, European reaction, as far as it's seen from London, ranges from the man on the street who is stunned to the Queen of England, who we may assume feels the same as the rest of us. The Queen was informed immediately as soon as the news was received. She is to issue an official statement from Buckingham Palace very soon. The Prime Minister, Sir Alex Douglas Hume, is driving back to London. He was at dinner 40 miles out of town. He left the dinner table and is coming back to London. We have an official statement from Downing Street which says, Prime Minister has learned with the most profound shock and horror of the death by assassination of the President of the United States. The Prime Minister will have more to say later. He's going on radio and television later tonight, Morgan.
Incidentally, Ken, we will mix bulletins in with your report to us. We've just reported before that President Johnson had taken the oath of office. For the record, historically, he took the oath aboard the presidential plane at Dallas's Love Field. Now, will you come in again, Ken?
Yes, Morgan. I think an interesting indication of the impact of this news in Europe is the fact that the BBC, which is a very steady-going outfit, was completely unprepared for it and went to silence and complete despair, apparently. There was a minute of silence after the original bulletin, and then the announcer, almost stuttering, which is most unheard of on the BBC, said, "We will now have some soft music." And he did. And an hour after the original bulletin on BBC Radio, they were to begin a panel program, a lighthearted program called Any Questions. And the panelists announced that they had decided not to go ahead with the program in deference to the death of the president. And a member of the panel, Lord Boothby, who was a colorful Tory, got up and said, "I have lived through 2 wars. I've had to live through some hard touches, including the deaths of friends. But the blow that has fallen tonight is for me the most shattering of all." I think that sums up the way an awful lot of people in Britain feel. Morgan, I went over to the Dover Castle, a pub near our office and near the BBC, They were very well informed because the BBC news staff were recalled from the pub. The bartender said, "This is terrible news," and a customer said, "It's a disaster." And another customer came up to me, and he started to speak, and it looked as if he just didn't know what to say, but he looked at me so sadly as if, "I'm so sorry."
Switch now, once again, to Dallas, Texas, to WFAA. Tom Perryman, will you come in?
Yes, we will, Morgan. Governor Connally was shot 3 times. A bullet entered his right arm, his left leg, and the back. He is reported in very, very serious condition, but not critical condition. Also, we have 2 of our newsmen at the mic right now. Both were there when the president was shot. I would like for you to hear the comments of Mel Couch and Pierce Allman. Mal, could you tell us what you saw?
Yes, I was in the 8th car in the motorcade. There were 5 other newsmen, myself, in this car. We just rounded a corner, and the president's car was heading out of downtown proper. We were at right angles to the president's car, about approximately 50 to 75 feet away. I heard this shot, or what it sounded like at the moment, to be a motorcycle backfiring, and I heard another one, and by the 3rd shot, it sounded, by then, the men in the car realized that it was not a motorcycle, but it was someone firing. Our car rounded the corner just as the president's car sped off down underneath an underpass and out onto what is known as Stemmons Expressway. I looked to the left of me as a policeman fell, pulled his pistol. To the right of me, 2 citizens dropped to the ground, and I had a chance to take a quick shot of the window from whence the assassin fired his weapon.
That was an eyewitness report from Mal Couch, WFAA TV newsman. Pierce Allman also was nearby when the president was shot. Can you add anything briefly, Pierce?
Not at all, Tom. I heard the 3 shots. I glanced. The president was down in the car. I thought he was ducking, which was a natural reaction. And Jackie was just beginning to clutch at him, and he had Jackie. Then the car sped off, and I ran over to the Texas School Book Depository building where the shots occurred. And I didn't see anybody run out or run past. We just got back from there.
Also, Morgan, we have a statement from Lieutenant Governor Preston.
Thank you. I would like to note at this time we have word from the White House Secret Service detail about the confusion surrounding those who died along with the president. The White House Secret Service detail denies that any Secret Service man was killed in the Dallas assassination. Now, that's the report that's been bothering us from the beginning of this report to you on the assassination of President Kennedy, because we did know and had confirmation that a Dallas policeman had been shot, and of course the man apparently connected with that has been arrested in a theater. At least the man by the name of Oswald, a young man, black curly hair, has said it's all over now. But anyway, the Dallas policeman has been shot. There has been no Secret Service man shot. Incidentally, the Secret Service detail in the White House announces that Speaker John McCormick of the House of Representatives has now received a Secret Service guard. He is next in line for the presidency behind Lyndon Baines Johnson, who has been sworn in as President of the United States and is now en route to Washington. The Police Department of Dallas, Texas, reports that Lee H. Oswald, who was arrested in a theater in the outskirts of that city soon after the assassination of President Kennedy, is the prime suspect in the assassination of the president. They identify Lee H. Oswald, this curly black-haired man in his 20s, as a chairman of a Fair Play for Cuba committee. Now, in that connection, it is interesting to note what the Fair Play for Cuba committee is in the United States, or the various committees that were formed in universities primarily a couple of years ago. I happen to have reported the Fair Play for Cuba committee formation. This committee was originally formed with $5,000 traced directly by the Federal Bureau of Investigation from the hands of the Foreign Minister of Cuba, Raul, to an American and it was intended to build a backfire against the government of the United States here. Now, this does not indict all fair play for Cuba committees, but the fact is that Fidel Castro was the father of the fair play for Cuba committee idea in the United States, and the proof is complete and absolute from beginning to end. So we repeat the bulletin just received from Dallas, Texas. Lee H. Oswald, a young man in his 20s, black curly hair, was arrested in the theater in Dallas as the prime suspect in the assassination of President Kennedy. He scuffled with the police. He wounded one of the police. And when he was finally subdued, after a pistol was taken away from him, he said, well, it's all over now. So all of the evidence points to the fact that the police of Dallas are on the track of a very tragic connection involving the death of the President of the United States. There was a slight further detail on that point. Oswald worked in the building from which the shots were fired at the President. His supervisor said he was there at noon. That was a warehouse about 8 stories high. The shot was fired from a 5th or a 6th-story window. That has not been definitely determined yet. And there were workmen in the building refurbishing it for some reason or another. There were no tenants at the time in the building. So Oswald was a worker in this building.
A man has been arrested, Lee Oswald, a 24-year-old man who said 2 years ago he wanted Russian citizenship, is being questioned to see whether he had any connection with the assassination of President Kennedy. Under questioning now by police, reliable sources indicate he's the man, according to the questions that have been asked and the way he has answered them. The rifle that was used to kill the president has been picked up by police. Ballistics tests are being undertaken at this time. Oswald was an Oak Cliff, Dallas man, Oak Cliff, a section of Dallas, and he's undergoing questioning now, and sources that we have talked to indicate that he is the man. Morgan, federal officers have been going over the man very closely for a considerable period of time now. The witnesses to the president's assassination are in the next room at police headquarters, but they have not yet looked at the man. As we told you, the rifle used for the president's assassination has been recovered and is undergoing fingerprint analysis at this time. Now, the report to us is now that Oswald was picked up in New Orleans not long ago and fined $10 for distributing communist literature. That's the latest story on Oswald. He has not been charged yet, but is undergoing rigid interrogation at Dallas Police Headquarters. The report we have right now is that Governor Connally, also shot, is reported in satisfactory condition. Dr. Robert Shaw says he'll have to stay in the hospital at least 2 weeks. Also, we have an eyewitness report to the shooting, and would like for you to hear that now.
I am L.J. Lewis, 500 East Jefferson Avenue in Oak Cliff. And we were sitting in the office here, and we heard the shots. And I just casually made a remark. I said, I bet they have him cornered. And so I looked up the street and saw the suspect coming down the street, and he was reloading his revolver and stuck it in his belt when he got, just across the street from us. And he turned and went up the street, and I immediately phoned the police, and one of the boys here in the office, Warren Reynolds, and Pat Patterson, they followed the suspect up the street where he turned behind the service station and to the alley. I immediately phoned the police, and Warren and Pat Patterson, followed the suspect on up the street. And after that, it's just a matter of time, till all the police and everything were around here.
A salesman traveling on the road called the newsroom at WFAA and made mention of the fact that as he heard the information of President Kennedy's death on the radio while traveling through Waco, north through Texas on the highways, he noticed that all along the way, truck drivers were pulled off to the side of the road and in parking areas, and they were openly weeping and sobbing. Passengers in cars had pulled off to the road and were talking quietly in a numbed manner. Also, some were weeping. The entire scene on the Texas highways reflected the sadness of President Kennedy's demise. All social and civic functions have been canceled in the Dallas area for the weekend, too. Dallas schools, however, did remain in session.
Thank you, Roger. Ready. One final note, Morgan. Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy at Parkland Hospital took her ring off and put it on John F. Kennedy's hand. She lifted the president's hand and kissed it. One final note. That's the story from Dallas, Morgan Beatty.
WLW Radio is suspending our regularly scheduled programs during this time of mourning for our late president, John F. Kennedy. We ask you to join with us in prayers for John Kennedy, his family, and President Lyndon Johnson. At this time, we would like to introduce various notables here in the area of the Ohio Valley. The impact of the news of the president's assassination went round the world. It was a blow to the common man as well as to the leaders of the nation and the world. Here in Cincinnati, people reacted as though they had suffered a personal loss, as though a bomb had dropped. Crowd gathered downtown as they listened. As the news trickled in about the president, the people stood quietly, saying little, and there were tears showing in the eyes of some. The flags throughout the city, as in the rest of the nation, were dropped at half-mast as the first word of Kennedy's death reached them. The shock was so great that Lieutenant Mering in the helicopter flying over the Queen City area reported a heavy exodus of vehicles from the downtown. And apparently, people were so overwhelmed by the news that they just left their jobs and offices and went home. Here now, Mr. John T. Murphy, President of the Crosley Broadcasting Corporation.
Mr. John T. Murphy, President of Crosley Broadcasting Corporation.
The Crosley Broadcasting Corporation and its employees, as the rest of the nation, are deeply shocked by the untimely death of President Kennedy. His death has struck at the heart and conscience of America and the world, and his loss will be mourned for years to come. We of the Crosley Broadcasting Corporation join the rest of the nation in expressing our heartfelt sympathy to Mrs. Kennedy and the other members of the late president's family.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Here in Cincinnati at the W.E. Hutton & Company, the stock board flashed the news of the president's death. People just stood and watched. No talk, no movement, just shock. The news hit the streets quickly, and the newsboy's cry sent pedestrians into a stunned reaction. The people on the streets reacted as they could. Some could speak, some could not. Reaction from business, religious, and civic leaders was immediate, and regardless of political affiliations, their feelings were all the same: shock, sorrow, anger, and dismay. These were some of the many to express their feelings for WLW. Congressman Rich, Republican of the 1st District of Ohio.
Congressman Rich, how did you feel when you first heard the news of the assassination?
Well, I feel terrible. I can't realize yet that it's true. After all, President Kennedy was a world leader, the leader of the free world. He was our president, president of everyone. And I am so personally deeply distressed. I know the whole nation is, and I'm sure the whole world will pray for the safety of America. My deepest sympathy to the Kennedy family, one of the greatest families in Americans' history.
Thank you, Congressman Rich.
These words from the former congressman from Cincinnati, chairman of the Hamilton County Republican Committee, Mr. Gordon Shearer.
Share what was your reaction to the death of the president?
Well, it's almost unbelievable that a tragedy like this can happen in the United States today. I have no idea what diabolical forces were behind this assassination, but it demonstrates clearly how dangerous to our security one or two persons can be. I only knew the president slightly, but this brutal killing has completely upset me, Glenn.
Thank you.
From a prominent Cincinnati civic leader and president of the Kroger Company, Mr. Joseph Hall.
Hall, what was your reaction to the death of President Kennedy?
Well, it was unbelievable to me that in this country and in this day of age that this could happen. It has been my privilege to attend several meetings in the White House and to listen to our President discuss many of the serious and important problems. One could not help but listen to him without realizing that he had a full grasp of what was happening in the country and an understanding of the problems and a sincere desire to try to do something about them. One could not leave the meeting without having the respect for our President.
This is the nation station, WLW in Cincinnati, your Clear Channel service.
For me, it is a deep personal tragedy. I know that the world shares the sorrow that Mrs. Kennedy and her family bear. I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask for your help and God's.
The NBC radio network will stay on the air with continuous coverage until 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will resume broadcasting at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Saturday tomorrow with continuous coverage. We pause now 10 seconds for station identification.
This is WLW in Cincinnati. WLW Radio is suspending our regularly scheduled programs during this time of mourning for our late President, John F. Kennedy. We ask you to join with us in prayer for John Kennedy, his family, and President Lyndon Johnson.
The body of assassinated President John F. Kennedy will lie in repose at the White House tomorrow, to be viewed by mourning members of his family and high dignitaries of the government. The general public will not be admitted tomorrow. The White House announced tonight that the body, flown from Dallas with the same Air Force jet bringing the new president, Lyndon B. Johnson, to the nation's capital, will be on view from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Saturday. The presidential plane also carrying Mrs. Kennedy and Mrs. Johnson of course, came into Andrews Air Force Base at 6:15 p.m. this evening. President Johnson, Speaker of the House John McCormick, next in succession, as we have said, to the presidency, and former residents and members of the executive branch holding presidential appointments will be in at 11, and other dignitaries will follow during the day. And this story from London, a group of 61 New York-bound airline passengers, almost all of them Americans, were about to board their plane in London tonight when somebody cried, "The president is dead." The passengers reacted with shocked disbelief to the news of President Kennedy's death. As they said, most of them were unable to believe this tragedy has happened, and this has been, of course, the general reaction the world over. In Washington, the stark gray Navy ambulance driving through the dark November streets bore the body of the slain president back to Washington for the last time tonight. Closeted in grief behind drawn curtains rode John F. Kennedy's widow, along with a group of his closest friends and associates. The route traveled from Andrews Air Force Base in nearby Maryland to Bethesda Naval Hospital, where the body will be held overnight. Speaker John W. McCormick announced that the dead president be taken to the White House tomorrow, and then, as we said, will lie in state in the Capitol for the public mourning all day Sunday. The official mourning, of course, will be tomorrow. On the arrival at Andrews, the bronze-colored casket of the assassinated chief executive was placed on a lift truck at a plane door by 4 of President Kennedy's aides, and flashes of bronze light glittered with a painful intensity from floodlights at the mournful scene. Now for a report on one of the officers who arrested the suspect, who was in on the arrest of the suspect. We switch to Bob Whitten at KCRA in Sacramento, California.
What the first call that I got was that the president's been shot. The shot had come from the Texas School Book Depository at Elm and Houston Street. They sent me down there. I started in with a couple of deputy sheriffs. We were shaking the building as well as a bunch of other officers, but one one of these deputies and I were lucky enough to find the window where the shots were fired from, and also the 3 shells laying on the floor. I went back down, secured the scene, went back down and reported to the inspector so he could get the crime lab and everything out there. And while I was there talking to him, a call came out that an officer had been shot. Some citizen was using the police radio. That call came out, the acting lieutenant in Oak Cliff and I were together, standing there talking to the inspector, and he ordered us, being that we had all the police in town pulled down there on Elm Street, he ordered us to leave this investigation of the president's shooting and go to Oak Cliff. We did. Got out there, the officer had already been picked up. We got a description of the suspect, started following his path as best we could. Had information that he was in one of 2 houses that were vacant over on East Jefferson. We went in over there and called for some more help to cover up the buildings and everything. Shut those down. He wasn't there, and then we got a report that he was in the library at Marsalis and in Jefferson.
Where were these reports coming from, Jim?
From people who had heard the description of the man. Then when we got to the library and found out that was another false alarm, the 3rd call came in that he had been seen entering the Texas Theater. Bob Barnett from the FBI and I went into the theater, and everybody else put it off outside. We started checking out the patrons in the theater. The movie was still going on. And on the 3rd one that McDonald started to approach, who was sitting in the 3rd row from the back in the center section, just as McDonald got to him, he jumped up and yelled, "This is it." And he struck McDonald in the face and grabbed for a pistol, which he had under his shirt. When he did that, Mac yelled, and all 7 of us got into a fight and finally got him subdued and handcuffed, or disarmed and then handcuffed. And we were then instructed by a captain to get him out of there and get him to Central Station as fast as we could. Incidentally, Paul Bentley was in on it with us. When we got him outside, I don't know whether the people in the neighborhood had just heard about the policeman's death or whether they had heard about, I'm sure they'd heard about the president's too. But there were some 600 to 800 people outside yelling, "Kill him," and this, that, and the other, and some more officers had to be pressed into service right quick that didn't actually have their hands on him to force the crowd back so we could get him in the car without anybody touching him. We brought him down and turned him and the pistol and everything over to Captain Fritz. The boy that we apprehended for shooting Officer J.D. Tippett is an employee of the book bindery where the shots that killed the president were fired from. He was seen on the floor below the window where the shots were fired some 15 minutes prior to the shooting. He was a former U.S. Marine marksman who defected to Russia in 1957 and returned to the United States approximately a year ago with a Russian bride, I understand. He did admit in the interrogation a while ago he was an active communist. He has not admitted the shooting of the president or the governor or the police officer, but a gun was found on the 6th floor where it had been hidden that I have been told, and I can't verify this either way, was made in Argentina. The man, I understand, has resorted to violence before and possibly shot another policeman somewhere. He won't admit anything other than he was a communist. He started screaming brutality as soon as we got the handcuffs on him. And when he got down here and was talking to Fritz and them, the only thing he said is, when I told you I was a communist, I admitted everything. I'm going to tell you your words to that effect. And I want a lawyer. I demand my rights. But circumstances being as they are with all the other situations together, I firmly believe that we got the man who killed the President of the United States.
Jerry, did you talk to him any?
Bob, he's very arrogant. We offered him an opportunity on the way to the station. We told him there were going to be a large number of photographers there, and we quite naturally, automatically, everybody thinks brutality when if you catch a cop killer, you know. We told him that that there would be photographers there, and if he wanted to hide his head, we would hold him loose enough. We were going to hold him, but he could bend over and hide his face against his chest, or just bend over where they couldn't get a clear view of him or anything like that. This he refused to do. While he would not admit anything, he seemed very arrogant and proud of what was happening to him.
Didn't show any sign of nervousness at all?
Didn't show any sign of nervousness at all. Continually made threats against the officers all the way downtown, and I rode in the car with him about the brutality of his rights, and made the statement when we started questioning about killing the officer. He made a statement. He said, "I don't have to tell y'all anything."
What kind of a weapon did he use to kill the officer with, Jerry?
38 snub nose. It was fired twice, and both shots hit the officer in the forehead.
What are they going to do with him now?
Captain Fritz, Secret Service, and the Rangers, and the FBI have all questioned him. And the halls out here are working live with people quite naturally, and they moved him upstairs for a little while. And I'm sure that later they'll bring him back down and interrogate him some more, but they wanted to go out to his house and check, find his car and all that stuff, and see, if they could find any more things that would tie him in. Understand that this is being done quite rapidly, and that some of the pieces are falling into place pretty good.
You've heard the report of Jerry Hill, Officer Jerry Hill of the Dallas Police Department, who arrested Lee Oswald as a suspect in the shooting of the President of the United States, and you can read between the lines sufficiently to know it has meaning. And we have further word from Dallas, Texas, that Lee H. Oswald, the pro-Castro Marxist, admits now, finally, that the pistol used to shoot the policeman in the movie theater where he was captured was his. That is almost tantamount to an admission that he did shoot the policeman attempted. His arrest was attempted. He was, of course, arrested and taken to the police headquarters. And then he denied any part still in the assassination of the President of the United States. But there are indications from Dallas, very definite indications, that this man is going to be charged with a crime in a very short time, if he's not already charged. Let's go to Tom Perryman, station WFAA, again in Dallas.
From here, Morgan, Officer Will Fritz, Captain Will Fritz of the Dallas Police Department, reports that Lee Oswald will be charged with the killing of Officer J.D. Tippit this afternoon. The shooting occurred a few miles from the point President Kennedy was shot to death. Oswald, the accused, was arrested near the at the theater in Oak Cliff, near where Officer J.D. Tippit was shot to death. And he will be charged with the death of Tippit. Fingerprints from the rifle that was taken from the warehouse are being studied at this time. Also, our reporters at the home of Oswald reports they found a great deal of communist literature in his room. That's the story from here, Morgan.
Well, can you fill us in a little bit, Tom, on one point that we haven't cleared up at all? Now, there were these two officers, Jerry Hill and McDonald, at the theater. That was the making of the arrest, and McDonald was hurt in the scuffling. And now about Tippit. We are not clear as to exactly where Tippit was shot. Now, this man admits that he owned the gun that shot Officer Tippit to death. Where was Tippit shot, and wasn't it before the two officers, sometime before the two officers, say like a matter of minutes or something, captured him in the theater?
As far as we can tell, he was shot shortly before going into the theater. Tippit had stopped Oswald because Oswald appeared to be a suspect in the assassination of President Kennedy. And Tippit made a routine stop of Oswald. At this point, Oswald is alleged to have shot Tippit to death and to have run into the theater, where fellow officers arrested him after trapping him in the back part of the theater.
A very interesting point. Now, he admits that owning the snub-nosed .38 caliber revolver used to shoot the policeman. He admitted that in the interrogation in the Dallas Police Headquarters today, and that means he practically admits the killing of the policeman, and the policeman stopped him because he had some suspicion that this man was connected with the assassination of the president. And yet, in all of the questioning, this man denies any part in the assassination of President Kennedy. I believe he's been quoted by the police, hasn't he, Tom, as saying this, and I believe these are the exact words: "I don't know what this is all about. I didn't do anything." Do you have any further quotes on him in that area?
He has denied any knowledge of the assassination. As far as we can tell, there's been no further word from his change of position there.
The President's body will be moved from the White House in an official cortege to the rotunda of the Capitol at 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon, where it will lie in state for one day. Members of the President's family, cabinet, and government leaders, and members of the Supreme Court, members of the Congress, and diplomatic representatives of foreign nations will be present at the ceremonies placing the President's body in state mourning. The public will be permitted to file past the bier in the rotunda shortly after its arrival on Sunday and until 9 o'clock Sunday night, and from 9 until 10 o'clock Monday morning. The body will then be moved at 11 o'clock Monday morning to St. Matthew's Cathedral here in Washington for a pontifical requiem mass at 12 noon. The mass will be celebrated by His Eminence Richard Cardinal Cushing, Archbishop of Boston. Seating arrangements for the mass will be assigned by the White House. There is still no indication of where the president will be buried, but it's assumed that he will be buried in the newly acquired presidential plot in Brookline, Massachusetts. Burial is expected to be Monday afternoon. This is Robert Gorelski, NBC News, reporting from the White House.
And now, if we may get ahead of the sad funeral preparations, which are now completed with military precision. The military are in charge of such matters in Washington by a recently passed congressional law. If we may get ahead of that a little and go to the Naval Hospital where the body of the president is under examination. We take you now to Don Herbert at Bethesda Naval Hospital in Washington.
This is Don Herman at the Bethesda Naval Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland. I'm down in the basement of the hospital now, just outside the morgue, wherein the remains of the late President John Fitzgerald Kennedy are being examined. The length of time the autopsy will take is not yet known. The President's personal physician, Admiral Berkeley, and other physicians here at the hospital are in attendance. The extent of the autopsy's time, as we say, is not yet known. However, arrangements have been made by the Army for Navy vehicles, 3 Navy vehicles, to transport the remains of the late President to Gawler's funeral home here in the district in Washington. And at the same time, an honor guard of 4 Marines will be accompanying the remains following the autopsy. Elsewhere in the hospital, at the front entrance, still hundreds and hundreds, perhaps several thousand people, it's hard to estimate at this point, are gathered in front of the main entrance awaiting Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Sergeant Shriver's exit from the hospital. They entered the hospital shortly after 7 o'clock and have been there a little over an hour and 15 minutes. They're awaiting, the crowd is awaiting these 3 leaving the hospital. They'll be entering a line of limousines that are patiently lined up in front of the hospital, all dutifully performing their tasks. The drivers of the car, the Marines, the doctors, all the hospital personnel here performing jobs that they normally wouldn't perform. They have never been asked to perform under this amount of pressure in a lifetime. The latest word on the remains of the late John F. Kennedy is that the autopsy is now being performed. When it is finished, the remains will be taken to Gawler's funeral home in Washington, D.C. This is Don Herman reporting from the Bethesda Naval Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland.
The police of Dallas, Texas know exactly where the gunman who slew President Kennedy hid in ambush. They're questioning a suspect who was on the scene at that time. That's the word. Lee Harvey Oswald is the man, the same man they've got under arrest right now in Dallas Police Headquarters. Captain Will Fritz of the Dallas Police Homicide Department says it has been established that Oswald had been in the building from which the shots were fired at the president at the time they were fired. This man, as we've previously learned, had worked in this building. It was a warehouse, a storage point for school textbooks. And it was unoccupied at the time. It was undergoing some sort of repair or refurbishing or extension. And Oswald got himself a job in that warehouse, and his supervisor, whom he's been working with for some days or weeks, his supervisor told the police that at noon, Oswald was in the building. Now it has been established by others that Oswald was not only in the building at noon, when his supervisor saw him, but he was in the building at 12:30 when the president was shot. And now we've established that the shots came from the 5th floor, not the 6th floor. It's a 6-story building, all right. The shots were fired from a 45-degree angle. The assassin was 100 yards from the president. His view was unobstructed. He used that .30 caliber rifle with telescopic sights. Now, there's been some doubt about that. Some say a Mauser German rifle had been used to shoot the president. Now, we are informed it was a .30 caliber rifle with telescopic sights. It can be noted, I think, fairly, that Lee Harvey Oswald was a sharpshooter in the Marines. He had become a marksman. The police report they found the rifle that did the execution, or the assassination. It was partly hidden behind some books. It's a bolt-action model believed to be of Italian make. Now, that's a .30 caliber rifle of Italian make. Also found were 3 spent cartridges, as we reported before. And, again, repeating our previous reports, there were scraps of fried chicken around. It looked as if Oswald had been in the building for some time. The indication is that whoever shot President Kennedy sat for a long time, calmly fed himself on chicken, as he waited for the exact moment to shoot at the President of the United States near an underpass on a road leading from the center of Dallas toward the airport. Now, that theater where Oswald was arrested, you see, was some distance from the scene of the shooting. As a matter of fact, it's been established now by rechecking that the theater where the man was arrested is some 4 miles from the triple underpass where President Kennedy was shot. Just before 7 p.m. tonight, Captain Will Fritz, that's 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, said that Oswald had been identified from a police lineup as the man who shot Patrolman Tippett. Now, that's further confirmation that Oswald was the man who shot the patrolman near the theater. He said, the police captain said that an eyewitness had made the identification, and Oswald himself has admitted that he owned the pistol that shot the policeman. But he said, I don't know what you're talking about, when they asked him about the assassination of the president. As Oswald was returned from the lineup in front of witnesses, a reporter shouted at him, "Did you kill the president?" Oswald replied in a loud voice, "No, I did not kill the president. I did not kill anyone." Well, he's already practically admitted he shot the policeman. The police now say that Oswald, who worked in that book depository building, had lived in Russia, married a Russian woman. November 1st, 1959, he applied for Russian citizenship. It was denied. Now, perhaps we can get further detail and catch up with the story, this tremendously dramatic, tragic story of Lee Harvey Oswald. We take you once again to Pierce Allman at station WFAA in Dallas.
Morgan, the latest report we have from City Hall is the fact that Lee Oswald will be charged before midnight tonight. This announcement came from the district attorney's office. He has not been charged as of this time with the assassination. He has definitely been charged with the murder of the patrolman. But this word is that he will be charged, and the charge will read roughly like this: that H. Lee Oswald did, willfully and with malice aforethought, kill one John F. Kennedy as a part of an international communist plot.
So then we're left to conclude without any doubt that the district attorney of Dallas believes there is a plot. A plot means more than one. So they must suspect very definitely that more than one person is involved in the assassination of the President of the United States, and certainly in the murder of the policeman. Is that about all you have there at this time?
That's it, Morgan. Right up to this moment, we will be in touch
with WFAA and its very able staff later. And now we have a revised version of the capture of the suspect in the president's murder. The details of how Lee H. Oswald, or H. Lee Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald, was apprehended. We now have it as a certainty, a police report. And Patrolman J.D. Tippett, this is an informal police report, not one of their official documents. Patrolman J.D. Tippett of the Dallas Police Force stopped a man on the street about 4 miles from the scene of the assassination. Now, we know that the assassination was 4 miles from the theater where Oswald was captured. So that means he was very close to the theater when this happened. The man drew a gun and shot Tippett. Then he fled as neighbors notified the police. A few minutes later, the cashier of the Texas Theater, 5 blocks from where the patrolman had been killed, telephoned Dallas Police Headquarters that a man had run into the theater. His description matched that of Tippett's killer. 4 policemen were dispatched to the theater. The movie was in progress, but only a dozen or so people were there. An usher led Patrolman M.N. McDonald to where Oswald was sitting. The man jumped up and said, "This is it." That's Oswald said that. He pulled out a snub-nosed revolver and tried to shoot McDonald, but the gun misfired. The 4 officers all jumped on him. He fought wildly until they had handcuffed him and dragged him to a car. Previously, our reports were that 2 officers had jumped the man. Well, apparently they smothered him with 4. Now, Oswald has confessed to the police that he owned the gun that shot Patrolman Tippett. So the 4 miles are yet to be accounted for, and we have the mystery of the plot. Was he alone? Were others with him? We take you now to Tom Pettit, NBC News in Dallas.
Dallas Police Chief J.E. Curry says 24-year-old Lee Oswald now is being questioned about the killing of President Kennedy. Chief Curry says Oswald denies the murder, but says he is, quote, a very good suspect. When transported in front of cameras and reporters a few moments ago, the suspect, Oswald, shouted, "They're holding me because I was in the Soviet Union. The police won't let me have legal representation." Within the hour, Oswald has been charged with the murder of police officer J.D. Tippett, but according to police here now, he still steadfastly denies killing President Kennedy. The questioning at this hour continues. Tom Pettit, NBC News, at Dallas Police Headquarters.
President Johnson, we hear from Washington, has arrived at his home just outside of the city. We take you now to Nancy Dickerson, at President Johnson's home in Spring Valley, Washington.
President Lyndon Baines Johnson just arrived home at his estate here on the outskirts of Washington in the Spring Valley section. He was preceded by a motorcycle caravan. His entourage whipped up the hill leading to the Elms, which is the name of his estate. There were something like 7 motorcycles that preceded him, several Secret Service men. The regular Secret Service car was right behind. You could see guns. This is something not normally in sight when you see Secret Service men protecting the president. The president, Mr. Johnson, sat on the outside of the car. He looked weary, but he raised his hand to wave acknowledgement as he drove up the driveway. Seated next to him in this crowded car was William Moyer. This is the deputy director of the Peace Corps now, but in the past, Bill Moyer has been the president's aide. He was with him all during the campaign. President Johnson has now arrived home. He's inside. The place is surrounded by Secret Service people, and as always happens in tragedies of this case, the reporters, the telephone company, everyone is here trying to install equipment so that broadcasting can take place from the home. The neighbors are standing around. They're watching. There is much excitement, but there is a subdued shock treatment. It's a sense of reverence as the people stand around wondering what next. This is Nancy Dickerson of NBC News in Washington at President Lyndon Johnson's home.
The White House is all but empty tonight. President Lyndon Johnson, who arrived here just 4 hours after President Kennedy was assassinated, worked until a few minutes ago in his vice presidential offices on the 2nd floor of the Executive Office Building across the street from the White House. He is now in his own home in the district to spend the night. The widow of the slain president, Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy, and his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, are reportedly spending the night at Bethesda Naval Hospital, where the coffin bearing President Kennedy's body was taken. There is no word on where the Kennedy children are at this hour. There is uncertainty whether or not the coffin will be brought to the East Room of the White House tonight or tomorrow. A presidential aide says that it will remain at the hospital all night, but a priest from St. Matthew's Cathedral, where a pontifical requiem mass will be held Monday, said the casket will be brought to the White House sometime after midnight. It will be on view tomorrow for members of the family, President Johnson, cabinet members, and other high-ranking officials of the government. Arrangements for the funeral are being handled by the Director of the Peace Corps, Sergeant Shriver, the late President's brother-in-law. For tomorrow's viewing, the casket will be flanked by 2 silver candle holders and by a kneeling rail. 3 busloads of an all-service honor guard in dress uniform have arrived at the White House, presumably to stand guard at President Kennedy's casket when it arrives. Before President Johnson left, the White House announced that he will meet with Secretary of State Dean Rusk at 9:30 tomorrow morning and with former President Eisenhower at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. President Johnson also discussed with FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover the investigation of the assassination. He also talked with a doctor attending Governor Connally of Texas, who was wounded by the same sniper who killed the president. The governor's condition was reported as good. Earlier, President Johnson conferred with security officials, with Defense Secretary McNamara and with McGeorge Bundy, a White House security advisor. He also met with legislative leaders who assured him of bipartisan support. Here at the White House now, crowds are still waiting across the street on Pennsylvania Avenue, waiting as though they still didn't believe the terrible news. This is Richard Valeriani, NBC News, at the White House in Washington.
NBC's Tom Pettit is in Dallas. On the latest in connection with the police activities there, we go now to Tom Pettit in Dallas.
Dallas Police Chief J.E. Curry says, "I believe we have the right man." He is discussing 24-year-old Lee Oswald, prime suspect in the assassination of President Kennedy. Questioning of Oswald has been suspended briefly while paraffin tests are run to determine if he is linked with the rifle believed to be the murder weapon. Oswald earlier was charged with the murder of police officer J.D. Tippett, who had gone to apprehend Oswald. But he denies killing President Kennedy, says he is being held because he was in Russia. Tom Pettit, NBC News at Dallas Police Headquarters.
We are just informed that Ambassador to the United Nations, Adlai Stevenson, has arrived in Washington, and we have more for you on that now.
Well, the obsequies and these ceremonies will take place tomorrow. And I said this afternoon in New York that I thought that the tragedy of this day is beyond any instant comprehension. And all of us who knew him will bear the grief of his death until the day of ours. And all men everywhere who love justice and freedom and peace will bow their heads. At such a moment, one can only turn to prayer. Prayer to comfort our grief, to sustain Mrs. Kennedy and his family, and to strengthen President Johnson and to guide us in time to come. May God help us all.
And the voice you undoubtedly recognize as that of Adlai Stevenson. One wonders if memories, rather recent memories, came to Mr. Stevenson when he heard this hideous news of the time when he was in Dallas just a short time ago, when right-wing pickets who dislike his foreign policy and the administration's foreign policies generally picketed him, and he actually got hit with a sign by one of them, an incident which he dismissed, but which perhaps he recalled now because of the president's death in Dallas.
The NBC radio network will stay on the air with continuous coverage until 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will resume broadcasting at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Saturday, tomorrow, with continuous coverage. We pause 10 seconds for station identification.
WLW Radio is suspending its regularly scheduled programs during this time of mourning for our late President, John F. Kennedy. We ask you to join with us in prayer for John Kennedy, his family, and President Lyndon Johnson.
Although Lyndon Johnson has become president, no one under our system of succession automatically moves up now to vice president. John McCormick of Massachusetts, Speaker of the House of Representatives, 72 years old, would now become president should Lyndon Johnson die. But Mr. McCormick does not automatically become vice president, nor does he expect to assume additional duties, for instance, on those occasions when the new president might be away from Washington. President Johnson met Speaker McCormick and the other leaders of the House and Senate this evening. Mr. Johnson was described afterwards by one who was there as humble and chastened. The Republican leader of the Senate, Everett Dirksen, said earlier this evening that he thought Congress would not change its plan to continue work until December 20th. There are appropriations bills, for instance, which must be passed. Other Capitol leaders echo this feeling. I think we should carry on, one said. Congress must show the world continuity. Congressional leaders know Lyndon Johnson well. They remember him as an effective Senate leader, not afraid to make decisions. Tonight they expect Congress to work with him sympathetically, giving him every chance they can to become accustomed to his new burdens. This is Robert Abernathy, NBC News, Washington.
The telegrams of condolences from the countries of the free world and some of the countries of the communist world continue to pour in. From France, a message from the French Premier, Monsieur Georges Pompidou, to President Lyndon Johnson said, deeply moved by the tragic loss experienced by the United States on the death of President Kennedy, whose courage and great gifts as a statesman were admired by all the French people. I wish to convey to you the grief felt by all my fellow countrymen. Rest assured that at a time when under such cruel circumstances you take up your high office, my colleagues of the French government and myself join with you in a feeling of most grieving and most loyal friendship. Everyone, you get the feeling, searches for words to try to find them, to try and find the right ones, to show the strength of our feelings. Everyone all over the world, and it's extremely difficult, but the feelings are all there. A telegram to Mrs. Kennedy from General Douglas MacArthur said, I realize the utter futility of words at such a time, but the world of civilization shares the poignancy of this monumental tragedy. As a former comrade in arms, said General Douglas MacArthur, his death killed something within me. And of course, General MacArthur was the supreme commander, a man of great renown, and during the World War, at the time when the former president was a rather minor lieutenant junior grade in charge of a PT boat. The governor of New Jersey, Governor Hughes, a Democrat, also had a reaction to this tragedy. Let's hear that now.
I share with my countrymen today a shock and grief which defies description. A young and fearless American has died in the service of his country, even as many years ago his body absorbed the wounds of battle in the name of freedom. Now John Kennedy belongs to history, and his courageous spirit joins the fellowship of those who never flinched in the doing of right and in the search for justice. May God bless him and his family and the America he loves so deeply. To President Johnson, now assuming the burdens of an office on which rest the hopes of all humanity, go the prayers and dedication of every one of us.
Just in this information, President Kennedy's body will be brought from Bethesda Naval Hospital to the White House sometime during the night. This, according to Acting Presidential Press Secretary Andrew Hatcher. The body will lie there in repose on a platform called a catafalque, similar to the one, in fact, which was used for President Lincoln, who fell to an assassin's bullet in 1865. Mr. Hatcher said the body now is in the care of Gawler's funeral home. Undertakers of this establishment are preparing the body for burial at the Bethesda Naval Hospital, according to Mr. Hatcher. Speaking of the White House, we have some information from there concerning the new president and the problems he faces and the other problems attendant. From NBC's Richard Valeriani, we join him now at the White House.
The White House has just announced that the body of President Kennedy will be brought sometime tonight to the East Room of the White House, where it will lie in repose through tomorrow. There it will be viewed by the new president, Lyndon Johnson, members of the late president's family, and other high-ranking officials of the government and diplomatic representatives in the Capitol. The White House said that the body will rest on a raised platform, a catafalque, similar to the one used for President Abraham Lincoln, who was also assassinated about 100 years ago. An honor guard will be in continuous attendance. The catafalque will be flanked by 2 lighted candles. The coffin containing President Kennedy's remains is now at Bethesda Naval Hospital. That is where the widow, Mrs. Kennedy, is spending the night. She will return to the White House in the morning. These other bits of information became available just a short while ago. The White House said that for the time being, President Johnson will work in the more familiar surroundings of his vice presidential offices in the Executive Office Building across the street from the White House. The 6 cabinet members who were on their way to Japan for economic talks and then turned around when they heard of the president's assassination are now scheduled to arrive shortly after midnight in Washington. They'll view the body in repose tomorrow, and Secretary of State Dean Rusk is scheduled to meet with the new president at 9:30 in the morning. This is Richard Valeriani, NBC News, at the White House in Washington.
Other news in connection with the shooting and in connection with the world and its reception of the news. Texas Governor John Connally, who was wounded today during the assassination of President Kennedy, is now described as being in good condition. A spokesman at the Parkland Hospital in Dallas says the governor still does not know the president is dead. Governor Connally underwent a 4-hour chest operation after he was wounded this afternoon. An aide says he came to and asked for his wife, and then he asked her about their children. Doctors report the governor is, quote, mentally alert and comfortable, although he has not yet asked about Mr. Kennedy. The bullet which wounded him entered his right shoulder and then emerged through his chest. Removed and a cut lung repaired. But again, we repeat this one piece of good news that the governor of Texas, Mr. John Connally, is described by medical spokesman as being in good condition.
Funeral details are being handled by a private Washington undertaker, Joseph Gawler's Sons, Incorporated. At 4:25 this afternoon, this firm was requested to prepare the president's body. Tonight, 4 men from Gawler's went to the Bethesda Naval Hospital, where the president's body was taken from the airport. With them went a mahogany casket and a so-called church truck, a support for the casket. Specific arrangements have at no time been firm. It had been thought that the president's body would be brought to the funeral home en route to the White House. 24 Washington policemen were detailed to the home. So was a 5-man honor guard, 1 enlisted man each from the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. Their job would have been to guard the room in which the president's body might have lain. But now that plan has been changed. The president's body, professionally prepared, is now expected to be taken directly to the White House tonight. At the funeral home, the honor guard waits to be told to go home, and on the lighted board on which are written the names of those for whom the home is arranging funerals, there is written in crayon in this order: Mrs. Detmer, Mrs. Farnham, President Kennedy. This is Robert Abernethy, NBC News, Washington.
This is the Nation station, WLW, Cincinnati. WLW Radio joins its listeners in an expression of deep sorrow on the death of our president.
We have more reports coming in. We've been talking about the moods of cities, and we spoke of the mood here in New York, which is a deserted city with its great white way, not at all white tonight, but almost black, all of the signs turned off, people just moving along, people who have to be there for no other reason. Washington, a mournful city. Dallas closed down. We have a report now from San Francisco. For the mood of that city, here is Charles Morgan in San Francisco.
Normally, Friday in San Francisco is a busy day and a gay one. Cars back up for blocks, pedestrian traffic is thick, and it's almost impossible to shoulder your way through large and well-stocked stores. Today, though, San Francisco is a city in shock. The streets are deserted except for a few autos driven into the city by suburban housewives anxious to pick up their husbands. The stores have been deserted. The restaurants and bars report a minimum of business. Even tourists stay in their hotels to watch television and listen to radio reports of this tragedy. In usually crowded Union Square, there were less than 100 people, most of them drawn by television cameras recording an interview with Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge. All football games in the Big Six on the West Coast have been postponed, as they have been throughout the nation. Theaters are closing, so are nightclubs which feature song and dance acts. NBC reporters were on the street here today to get reactions to the assassination of the president. The reaction from all concerned, resident and tourist, was one of shock and dismay. Like all the world, San Francisco is a city of mourning. Charles Morgan, NBC News, San Francisco.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, if I may, a hard lead wrap-up to refresh our minds on the main factors of this tragic, important, historic event. From Dallas, Texas, a hidden gunman assassinated President Kennedy with a high-powered rifle today. 3 shots reverberated. Blood sprang from the president's face. He fell face downward in the back seat of his car. His wife clutched his head and tried to lift it. She cried, "Oh, no." Half an hour later, John F. Kennedy was dead, and the United States had a new president, Lyndon B. Johnson. Within the hour in Dallas, the police had arrested a 24-year-old man after a Dallas policeman had been killed. Homicide Captain Will Fritz says tonight witnesses had identified the man as the slayer of the policeman, but the Dallas detective said it has not been established that the man killed the president. No police authorities in Dallas will remark about the fingerprints, whether any were found on the rifle that did the slaying. The man under arrest is Harvey Lee Oswald, or Lee Harvey Oswald of Fort Worth. 4 years ago, he left the United States, applied for Russian citizenship. For reasons unknown to us, it was not granted. He returned to the United States with a Russian wife. They had 2 children. Oswald at first denied he had shot anybody. Later he admitted that he had owned a pistol that shot a policeman near a theater where he was arrested in the suburbs of Dallas. And in Washington, to complete briefly our wrap-up of the report, Lyndon B. Johnson assumed the burdens of the presidency tonight and immediately won a pledge of bipartisan cooperation from congressional leaders in the dark days to follow President Kennedy's assassination. The new president took over with an appeal for the help of God and the American people. He held a mid-evening meeting with House and Senate leaders of both parties after conferring with several leading administrative officials. Mr. Johnson was only a few cars back when an assassin's bullet felled his predecessor in Dallas, Texas.